There's nothing certain after that mess.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to go ahead and call this regular City Commission meeting of November 8th to order. I'm going to begin with an approval of the agenda with just a couple of changes. If you have your agendas out, we are going to strike agenda item 7, agenda item 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. We're going to move all of those to the next November meeting, which I believe is November 22nd. November 22nd. 7 through 12.
Okay.
7 through 12, we'll move all of those to November 22nd. That's the only change I have to the published agenda. So with that, if anyone else has any amendments, changes, I'll ask for an approval of the agenda.
So moved.
I have a motion from Commissioner Coleman, a second from Commissioner Maison. Any comments or questions on the motion on the floor from the dais? Any comments or questions on the motion on the floor from the public? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to invite Pastor Gary Bracewell of Christian Life Fellowship Church up to give tonight's invocation. He's got one short announcement I'm going to ask him to give before he gives us our invocation tonight. And then I will ask everybody to stand for the prayer and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pastor Gary, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You should never use the word short to a preacher, so try to keep it brief. Thank you. It is a season of giving thanks. Psalm 92 says it is a good thing to give thanks to the Lord. And CLF Church will be hosting our annual Thanksgiving in the Park coming up on Sunday, the 21st, at a community worship service at 11 a.m. that everybody's invited to. But if you have your own church family, you can still come for lunch afterward, because the Newberry Ministerial Association is partnering with the City of Newberry to provide the community table, and that's going to be a free Thanksgiving meal for everyone in the community, and that's going to be from 1 until 3 p.m. So the worship service is at 11, and the community table will be from 1 to 3 p.m. It's at Lois Fort Park, a beautiful setting there, and we're looking forward to that. We'll also be distributing turkeys and other blessings for the community. So we want to just share that with you. Look for the Facebook event, and also I think will be available through the city sources as well. So we're excited about giving thanks in our community and blessing this community that God has given us. So let's pray.
Thank you, Pastor.
Father, thank you. We just paused this.
Thank you, Pastor Gary, and let me say how much I appreciate CLF and the Newberry Ministerial Association for coming together, and City of Newberry, obviously, for coming together and hosting this event. I know what a tremendous event you guys have every single year there, so thanks for letting us crash and pull this off, and I think we will have a Thanksgiving the whole town can take part in and appreciate, so we appreciate you. And with that, we will move to presentations. And I think, Dallas, you're going to lead us through the Historic Properties Ad Valorem Tax Incentive Program. You gave the commission a little teaser on this at one of the 24 different budget meetings we had last summer, so thanks for bringing it back.
Absolutely. Mr. Mayor and City Commissioners, as the Mayor mentioned, we brought this up during the budget process, and It is, but let me move a little closer. As the mayor said, we brought this up during our budget process, and the commission expressed interest in the program. So tonight I have a brief presentation to explain how the program would work, to gauge if the commission's interested in it and get some feedback from the commission. If you are interested in it, we will go back and develop an ordinance to bring back for your consideration at a later date. So as I mentioned, the recommendation is to receive the presentation and provide direction to the city staff. Most importantly, if the commission is interested, we're looking for your direction in the length of the program and the percent of tax exemption provided. So speaking of our historic tax exemption, this is a map of our current historic district. We are in the process of trying to amend the historic district. We've applied for a grant to see if we can update it, but as of right now, this is your historic district as well as your designated historic sites. So Florida law does authorize that cities and counties can provide an exemption on the increase in value of an improvement on historic property. That exemption can be up to 100% of the tax increase and up to 10 years. It's very similar to the tax increment financing or TIF funds in your CRA, where the exemption is for the increase in value based on the renovations. Eligible properties have to be on the National Register of Historic Places or listed as a contributing structure in the National Register District or designated underneath your own local ordinances. Any renovations and rehabilitation eligible for this program do have to be in accordance with the federal guidelines and the state's guidelines, particularly the Secretary of Interior's Historic Preservation guidance. The law says that applications have to be reviewed by your local preservation office, if you're a CLG, which we are, or the Department of Historic Resources. And if a property owner is granted the exemption, they have to enter into a covenant, which is placed on their deed with the clerk of the court, which requires that they agree to maintain the architectural and historic integrity of the building. So the way the tax works is, for example, if a property owner is eligible and they do $25,000 in improvements, they would receive about $150 a year in tax abatement, which is approximately the city's millage applied to those increases. So over the course of 10 years, it'd be about $1,500. If it was a $200,000 renovation, they'd save about $12,000 over those 10 years. And again, the city commission has the option to determine whether it's 100% of that increase back to them and what the time limit is. Also, the county does offer a historic tax exemption, which would be in addition to any exemption the city offers. That exemption is currently in place in the city. So, for example, in the $200,000 example, the property owner could save up to $12,000 from us and then $16,000 from the county's taxes. The proposed process for an applicant would be that they would file a pre-construction application with our planning department. The planning department would review it for accuracy and to make sure that the proposed project meets the criteria of the statute and the local ordinance. If it does, the planning department would take it to the HARB, which is the Historic Architectural Review Board. The HARB would have to approve it. Once approved by the HARB, the owner would complete the work. Once the owner completed the work, they would come back to the planning department and turn in an application saying that they did it. The planning department would verify that the work was completed in accordance with the ordinance. That would then go back to the HARB for recommendation. The HARB would then provide a recommendation to the city commission on whether or not to grant the tax exemption, and the city commission's ruling is final. Also, the proposed ordinance we're drafting, or looking at drafting, would include appeals processes. So if the HARB denies it or planning department denies it, they could go to the commission for consideration. So that's my presentation. Again, we're looking for if the commission is interested in pursuing this program and what length and percent of exemption you would like to see, and if anybody has any questions.
Okay, so long and short, we could incentivize, bring people to come down, right, town. Should have a care about the CRA, right? Make sure we don't cut our legs out from under us when it comes to CRA. So I would be interested in staff's suggestion at what is the balancing act between incentivizing downtown and not, harming what we just accomplished with the CRA. Is there a percentage breakdown that we think would be kind of the sweet spot? Put you on the spot. So you thought you were putting us on the spot, and I just flipped it right back around and put you on the spot. Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, based off of, the examples that we're seeing, for someone to do a $200,000 renovation to their property, they're only going to receive $1,200 a year from the city, which means the city / the CRA is only losing $1,200. So it would take quite some investment for the city and the CRA not to realize any sort of significant increases. And then as mentioned, because this is incremental, it's just property taxes we're not going to earn, not property taxes that we're currently earning that we would lose.
Right. Okay.
And like I said, the commission does have the option to set it below 100%. So if that is a concern, the commission could set the exemption at 50%, and then the property owner would receive 50% off their taxes, and the city would still receive 50% of those taxes.
Okay. Any questions? And again, all we're talking about tonight is, this would be one more tool in our toolkit to potentially incentivize folks to come downtown, renovate downtown, build downtown. Commissioner Coleman?
Well, what I see here is that also, if they're going to using a $200,000 improvement, it's going to add value to their home, which is going to increase their taxes, unfortunately, which is where we will get more money because of it. I mean, that's the advantage I see.
I agree. Other thoughts? If you guys want, all we're doing is asking staff to come back and bring back an actual resolution for us to come about. Commissioner Farnsworth.
So what areas are you, of the city are you talking about? Did anybody get a handout of this presentation? Because I didn't get a handout.
It was in the backup material.
Yeah, I didn't see it.
I can provide you a copy of the map, but this is the map as it currently stands today.
Okay. Well,
Commissioner Martin.
really no help to me.
Do all these properties currently qualify under, what were there, 3 different criteria?
If they're identified underneath our own local ordinance, which I believe these properties are, look at Wendy.
Okay.
It's an old map.
These properties are all designated in our.
They are.
Yes, so they would all.
Some of them are gone.
So yes, they are designated underneath your local ordinance, so they would be qualified.
And does this have to be for anything from 0 up? Because quite frankly, I don't want to really bother staff for all these hoops for $150.
You're talking about
I'd rather it be your minimum qualification is maybe the $200,000 to make it worth the hoops that's everybody's got to jump through over this.
Mr. Mayor, I'm not aware of anything saying that we can't set a minimum, but that's something staff can look at when we start drafting the proposed ordinance. It's setting some sort of a threshold before you can qualify.
Yeah, I'm in favor of waiving the taxes. We don't need to tax people any more than we need to. But at some point, it's a law of diminishing return with the amount of paperwork that we would have to be dealing with. So that would ultimately cost us more internally than the abatement's worth.
Any other questions? Commissioner Farnsworth, you get located?
I have a general idea. That falls into our historic district?
Commissioner, Manager Nick.
I didn't rehearse this with Dallas, so if I catch you off guard, you can take it out on me tomorrow. But it seems that we're talking about tax benefit, Avalor tax benefit that the state permits us to do in a historic district. Nothing prohibits the commission for saying we want to blend it and add on some things that are beyond what the state would do. Other economic type incentives, maybe a reduction in building permit fees or something like that. Is that correct, or are we restricted? Or do you know?
I would say that this is the tax exemption process that is laid out in state statutes. As far as I'm aware, there's nothing that prohibits the city commission from providing additional economic development incentives. However, we may be treading into Attorney Walker's field there. I do know that typically private investment of public dollars is frowned upon, except for when you're using CRA dollars, unless you can prove a public use and a public purpose, which economic development typically falls underneath.
In Dallas, I mean, when I was looking this over, I thought that the goal here was commercial. And certainly I could see some value in incentivizing a resident who owns a historic home, renovating it, saving that historic home. But I think that speaks to Commissioner Martin's point. You know, if you're renovating a business like the cold storage, you're going to be well over $200,000 in that project. You know, if you're renovating something like the utility building, you're going to be well over $200,000 in that project. When you look at these programs, are they typically used for economic development incentivization? Are they historic preservation? Because I agree, we don't want to task staff running around chasing every $30,000 add-on to a historic home kind of a thing.
Mr. Mayor, they are typically, this program in particular is aimed at historic preservation, regardless of use of the building, residential or commercial. However, like you mentioned, it's not typical that a resident is putting $200,000 of improvements on their home, especially in our historic district. So I think if staff can identify a threshold, you know, if someone does put $200,000 into their residential home,
Sure.
the commission's decision, but I'd say, yeah, go for it. So when we come back, we can bring back those thresholds, which may curb, you know, like you're saying, this is not for, you know, I put $5,000 worth of new windows in my house and I want $5 a year or whatever, you know.
Okay, so first question to the board, interested in pursuing and having another conversation? Do you have another comment, Commissioner Martin?
I guess I was just pre-answering your question. I don't really have any appetite unless we can find a minimum that's of significance to make it worth the trouble.
Okay. All right, and staff, have you heard enough to bring us back something that's going to address that concern and make
Yes,
it
sir.
worthwhile? Any other concerns we want to preemptively give staff? No? All right, thank you, Dallas.
Thank you.
Okay, Jamie, come tell us what's going to be going on with Countryway stormwater remediation. I know we got some residents at home waiting for this agenda item.
Can you hear me better now?
Yeah, I just thought it was your natural soft-spoken self.
It may be. So just as a refresher, how we commenced with this project, naturally the Countryway subdivision, located south of 15th Avenue. It was constructed in phases over a 30-year period with infrastructure improvements, paved streets, stormwater, underground electric, water, and wastewater. The stormwater system is what we're speaking specifically to. It was designed with on-street stormwater swales and some backyard swales and backyard drainage easements and stormwater piping. It's an example of some of the backyard swales that were developed as part of the project. And it was designed in such a fashion that stormwater was conveyed down the right-of-way, eventually behind the houses into a backyard drainage easement, ultimately from these swales into a pipe and pipe into the stormwater retention basins. A few examples of that. The one there to the right, that actually was a catch basin that was designed in a backyard in Countryway that at some point in time somebody had constructed a deck over. The house had been sold and the new owner did not even know that the stormwater system was under her backyard deck. Some more examples of that backyard collection and drainage. We had some complaints from the citizens there. Their concerns were that during heavy rain events, the water was encroaching upon their foundation and eroding the backyards and front yards, and were concerned that there would be potential for sinkhole activity. So we hired an engineer to take a look at the original design of the system, focusing mainly on these areas listed here on Southwest 18th, 19th, 20th place, and 21st place. We classified that as Area 1 and Area 2 of concern in the backyards. And the engineer found that overall the stormwater system had been constructed as designed. However, over a period of years, there had been many improvements that were made in those lots that might have changed the stormwater plan, and that the grading when they were constructing the lots may not have been thought of as much as it should have been. So it also identified that there have been a lot of improvements: sheds, trees, planters, decks, hot tubs, and various other things constructed in this private drain or the public drainage easement. So we moved forward and brought those issues to the commission. We budgeted to do some work there. There was 3 options that the engineer had given us to restore it to its original design, make some additional improvements, or potentially pipe all of those swales to a retention basin. With the commission's direction, you basically directed me to put it back as originally designed and originally constructed. So we started clearing out those drainage structures, swales on the streets that would ultimately receive stormwater, clearing out all the stormwater piping that had not been maintained like it needed to be, reconstructing the swales in the backyards, which required us to remove all the privacy fencing and all of those improvements in vegetation and everything else in those backyards. So we started this process in middle to late 2019 with the commission's direction. We did Area 1 in 2020. We've recently finished Area 2. We used a contractor to assist us a good bit on Area 1, but all of Area 2 we did in-house to try to save as much revenue as possible. Area 2 is Southwest 20th Avenue and 20th Place. As you can see there, we had to reconstruct the swales, put the privacy fencing back, make sure that we had proper drainage, restore the grassing, and ensure that we could keep everybody's pets in their yard in the process. This particular area was where the deck was constructed over the catch basin. We basically installed a stormwater collection box, gathered up the additional pipes, and conveyed it to the pond. It's still fed by an open swale, the picture on the right. But that'll give you an idea of the before and afters of the area. And that is the total damage of the project over a period of 2 years. If you remember, the options varied from spending as little as $40,000, $50,000 up to, if we totally remediated and piped the whole thing, we were going to be over $250,000. So Area 1, a little better than $34,000. Area 2, a little better than $11,000, and $30,000 in the initial engineering and surveying, for a grand total on the project of $76,178. The one thing that I would wish that the commission would take away from this project, it just behooves the fact that at every opportunity you should not accept drainage in side yards and backlot easements, that if at all possible, all utilities and stormwater drainage conveyances should be constructed in the right of way. It's easier to maintain, and a lot cheaper.
How many prize azaleas did we have to lose in this process?
We replaced trees, we removed crepe myrtles, we replaced hedges, we removed various other planters. One of those pictures, if you can see that on the picture to the left, that shed that you see there was actually in the middle of that swale. The chances that the water would have got around it was slim to none. It was pretty much a dam. We had to move it too.
So I shouldn't put my hot tub in an easement.
Probably not.
That's what I'm hearing there. Yeah.
A lot of new privacy fencing tried to match grass where we intruded into people's yard, you know, above and beyond the easement. It's only 15-foot wide drainage easements there, so naturally in trying to restore those swales with equipment, we had to disturb a lot wider area. Same thing with the privacy fencing. We tried to match that back to what the homeowner had, and not necessarily better or anything, but restore to at least the original condition. But as the commission considers, or people come forward with variances or whatnot, you know, we had one over in Newberry Oaks a while back where they wanted to install a shed, and it happened to be on a stormwater pipe that they were unaware of. It just, like I said, it behooves the fact that every opportunity, if you can design and ensure that your stormwater conveyances is in the right of way, not in between houses, not behind houses, same things with your public utilities.
Absolutely. And in all seriousness, it just reiterates the work that the PNC does, that you guys do at asking all of those questions. And a lot of times we hear from developers, no developers in the room, obviously, but we hear from developers about get out of the way, speed up the process. But when you do that, sometimes this is what happens, and then you got to come back later and rip out those prize azaleas and crepe myrtles and come back and fix it right. So thank you for the update. Is this project now completed and finalized and to the point where we're not getting any? I have not received any complaints, so.
All the areas that we received complaints on have been addressed. We even did some surveying and engineering on the areas adjacent to it. So as of now, we have addressed everything that we're aware of.
That wasn't real wood, so I'm gonna get a call tomorrow.
But if you've got
That's
some back
wood.
there, please
Yeah.
knock on it. So.
And, Mr. Mayor, this is probably one project that staff is fine if the commission doesn't get out on social media and brag about, hey, we just finished this one. We'll let
Oh,
the
it's
next
just
one
about
come.
to post. Come
Yeah,
on.
we'll let the next one come, you know, through, you know, just grassroots as opposed to by invitation.
All right.
I have a question.
Wonderful. Commissioner Farnsworth, question?
So hopefully we got a system in process to go and inspect these areas to be sure they don't revert back to what they were before.
That is correct. We have them on an annual maintenance rotation to inspect the swales and clean the pipes and ensure that they outfall to the ponds correctly. But it was, as part of this process, some of the homeowners there were amazed that they actually had stormwater structures in their backyard and manholes in their backyard that they were unaware of, that they had planted azaleas and things on. They wanted to argue as to whether we had them there, and once we demonstrated, they was amazed that the things at their own house that they were unaware of.
Commissioner Maison?
All right. I wasn't here when this, help me understand this. Okay, so whoever this developer was, built this subdivision improperly?
The plan was approved by the city and by the commission, and it was, per the engineer, it was constructed per the design plans. So, yes, and the city did approve it. The city did accept the maintenance responsibility for those areas. But that's not something that we do moving forward. We do not accept the maintenance and operation of retention basins. We work with developers to try to ensure that all stormwater facilities are in the right-of-way, if at all possible, and we do not accept, you know, drainage easements in the backyard or public utilities in the backyard if there's any other way that it can be designed.
So all this cost the city, constituents, tax dollars to fix this situation?
That is correct.
Okay, the second question I have is, who's the developer? Are you allowed to say that or no?
Mr.
I would
Mayor?
say that this all happened so long ago that nobody, no city employee and even the developer wasn't the developer at that point in time. There were different state standards, there were different regulations.
So they're not here anymore. They don't build houses anymore. Do they build houses?
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to take a shot at that. I would say that, that standards were different then, and that if the drainage facilities had been constructed then in accordance with a current standard where we pretty much insist on those facilities being in front lot, it would have cost the city something. It does cost our taxpayers something for us to maintain infrastructure. The cost to maintain infrastructure in hard-to-get-to places, in backyards where there are privacy fences, and that you have to take the privacy fences down and replace them to get equipment back in there, makes the cost go up exponentially. I think Jamie said we spent $76,000. We may have spent $10,000 doing similar work if it were front lot. So in my opinion, I think in staff's opinion, this isn't a failing on a developer. We all are learning together, and we've all learned that putting utilities and public maintained facilities in folks' backyard is not a good idea, because the cost for the city to maintain it is so exponentially high.
And I will say, to the implication of the question, right, the city did do the research to determine if there was someone to blame here, or if it was growing pains when you got a fast-growing state and those kind of things. So if we had gone into that research and it was very clear, hey, this was not the standard and you built substandard, we would have gone back to that developer and said, you didn't do what you said you were going to do. We did the research. There really wasn't any person to really point the finger at. Standards were different, regulations were different, people were different, and so it's just one of those things. We know better now. But we did take the lesson from this and apply it to a recent development when the request was for drainage in the front yard somehow, some way. You know, we said, nope, been down that road before, we're not going back there again. So
Well, we got Jamie now, so
that's right. And we're going to clone him so that he doesn't retire on us.
so future developers, watch out.
Any other questions for Jamie? Thank you, sir.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that moves us to public announcements. Your commission likes to hear from you. We like to set aside time early in the evening so you don't have to wait till the very end. So if there's anything on your mind, it doesn't have to be on the agenda tonight. It can be any little thing that you'd like to bring to their attention. Tell us about a garage sale. Tell us about a Lions Club, festival, rodeo, anything like that. Now's the time. Resident Brian Thomas.
I can't say resident yet, Mr. Mayor, but I am happy to announce I want to introduce to you and the commission our latest hire, a new planner, Elena Jackson. She comes to us by way of the University of Florida. She has an undergraduate degree in
But the
anthropology.
premier institution.
Well, I'm getting there. I'm getting there.
Okay.
I'm not going to forget. Promise. University of Florida's got an undergraduate degree in anthropology and a master's degree in historic preservation. So we actually now have an expert on staff on historic preservation to help us out with these issues. But of course, the most important part is that she is a Newberry High School.
Whoa, there it is.
So
Yes.
she is
Welcome.
a local girl. So we just want to welcome Elena.
That's right. Thank you for that. All right, well, you got to come down and introduce yourself to the commission. Yeah, first night, first day on the job. We want to hear directly from you.
5-minute minimum speech.
Hello, I'm Elena Jackson, and I actually did K through 12 here, so I was a Newberry Panther all the way up, and then a double gator, and now I'm working for y'all.
And
Thank
Ms.
you.
Jackson also was a Friends of Dudley,
Yes, actually, I volunteered at Dudley for many years as well.
and we're going to be using that historic preservation degree to help save the Perkins House. She doesn't know that yet. I was just dropping that nonchalantly here in a meeting. All right, thank you. Any other public announcements? There was another time at the end of the night for 5 minutes. If you have something more controversial that you'd like to talk about, we'll get there too. If there are no more public announcements, we'll move to a consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as it was published? I have a motion from Commissioner Farnsworth, a second from Commissioner Martin. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Motion passes unanimously. Let's take us to public hearing and ordinances. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to do 5 and 6 together as a quasi-judicial. We'll read them separately, but as long as no one new enters the chambers, we won't go through our quasi-judicial procedures again. For those of you watching at home, I'd like to explain that when this board sits in quasi-judicial, they cease being a legislative body. They begin being a judicial body, and the rules of the game are slightly different. Primarily, that the rules concerning testimony is that the substantial and competent evidence must be met when the board makes a decision, and it shall state the following: all public testimony will be taken under oath. Everyone testifying will be subject to cross-examination. All documents and exhibits shall be entered into evidence, and the giving opinion testimony is limited to experts. Closing arguments will be limited to the evidence of record. I'm going to explain the order of procedures, but before I forget, Mr. Attorney, would you please read, well, we have a development agreement on this one. It's development agreement on both of them, so we don't agree that into the record.
That's correct, Mr. Mayor. The appropriate motion at the appropriate time will be to approve the development agreement between the City of Newberry and M3 Avalon Woods LLC.
Okay, thank you. So, Madam Clerk, would you please swear everyone, if you're here, even if you aren't sure if you're going to speak to either item 5 or 6, if you please would stand up now, we'll swear you in collectively for those 2 items. Madam Clerk.
Please raise your right hand and starting left. State your name for the record.
Brian Jones. David McDaniel. Chris Potts.
Wendy Kincher Maxwell. Do you hereby swear from the testimony you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do. You have your duties.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Let's do ex parte for items 5 and 6. Commissioner Coleman?
None.
Commissioner Farnsworth?
None.
Commissioner Martin?
None.
Commissioner Mazon?
None.
I'm a non-voting mayor, but I have none as well. Okay, the order that we will present in tonight for our quasi-judicials, we will first hear from staff with an overview. Then the applicant will have the opportunity to present with no time limit. Then staff's going to have the opportunity to report and give their recommendation, also with no time limit. I have not been contacted by anybody wishing to claim a third-party intervener status. So that's going to move us to public comment. Anybody here to speak to those items will be given 3 minutes to do so. Then the applicant will have the opportunity to cross-examine. Staff will have the opportunity to cross-examine. Members of the decision-making body can ask questions through the chair of the applicant or the staff. We'll hear from final arguments by the applicant and the staff. And the city attorney will advise the decision-making body. After that advice, then we will deliberate, and after deliberations, a vote will be taken to approve conditions, continue, or deny the application. With that, Ms. Wendy, would you please give us the staff overview? And if the applicant doesn't have a presentation, you can go right into that recommendation.
Thank you. The first slide we've got shows the master plan, and we point out where Phase 1B is, since that's the first development agreement we're talking about tonight. And this is part of the Avalon Woods entire development, and this is the property is located on the east side of State Road 27 or US 27, State Road 45, and it abuts the northwest. Well, I really get my roads mixed up. Northwest 24th.
24th Ave.
I don't know why. It's amazing. I'm a planner.
He's just showing off. That's it.
Northwest 24th Avenue. Okay, let's go to the next slide. The development agreement is between the City of Newberry and M3 Avalon Woods. It's for the residential portion of Phase 1B, the residential portion of the entire Avalon Woods subdivision. And the actual mixed-use development is Avalon Woods. And so when you go through and look at the different parts of the development, there are different areas where just for residential, which is what 1B is. There's an associated application for construction plans, and this does implement the overall development approval ordinance for the entire Avalon Woods development. And it also, there's an accompanying development agreement that covers the entire development as well. And so we're looking at a development agreement just for this Phase 1B, and that will go first, and then later at a later date you will have the construction plans and plat approval and that kind of thing. So this would provide for the necessary infrastructure for this Phase 1B, and it will ensure that those improvements are provided at the time that they need to be. And it would remain in effect until 2036, which is the same as the other development agreement for the entire development. As proposed, the development agreement is consistent with the previously approved agreement and that development approval ordinance and for the entire development, and it's consistent with the city's LDRs and land development regulations and the comprehensive plan. And specifically, when we look at our comprehensive plan, We're just going to show this information to you for a few different applications as we go for the next couple of times, so that you get used to it, just to remember that part of your review for and consideration for approval of these kinds of items requires that you consider property rights, and that's part of our adopted comprehensive plan now, which was done back in July. We adopted this, and there are 4 of these property rights that need to be considered. They are part of the Florida statutes, and it's required. So it's just something that you need to be aware of, be thinking about, that this is a consideration in any local decision-making for these types of items. So you've got that in your packet as well. So these, the request is consistent with that. And as recommended, it would be consistent with those regulations and with those property rights. So the development has specific conditions, and they are listed in your packet in the ordinance, and they're also in your packet as well to show you that that the city would cover certain kinds of things that are over and above what the development needs, and that the city of Newberry would be responsible for the difference, for example, with the electric provision. But you have those. If you have specific questions about some of those details, we do have experts here that can address those. And the actual statement as a part of the development agreement would be included about anybody who buys in their HOA documents. It would say that you do live near a park and there may be noise and light. The permitted uses are in accordance with the other development agreement and development ordinance that govern the entire development, and that's the master plan and required surety are the standard kinds of requirements in all development agreements. So this would meet the requirements for the Florida statute, and the recommendation is that you would pass the development agreement as the first hearing, and then announce that your second hearing would be on the 22nd of November.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Wendy. Would the applicant like to make a presentation? No? Okay, that's going to move us to public comment. Any members of the public here to speak to just item 5, that development agreement? Seeing none, that will take us, did the applicant wish to cross-examine anything that you heard? Okay, assuming staff doesn't want to cross-examine herself. Questions from the board? Mr. Farnsworth?
So when are they planning on starting the Phase 1B?
Come on down.
Commissioners, Mayor, to answer your question, probably sometime within the next 5 to 6 months. We have Phase 1A completed. The builders are getting started, and we would expect that to make sure that they have lots for the next round of sales, that probably 5 to 6 months will be getting started. Could be sooner.
And how long do you anticipate it'll be completed?
You know, I hesitate to give these optimistic numbers from my contractor. He tells me because of the fact that we don't have, the ponds are all built in Phase 1A and that sort of thing, that it could be as short as 4 months, but it's hard to know.
Okay. I don't know whether this is a question for you or Wendy, but is there any plan to do any improvements to 24th Avenue?
Not to my knowledge.
Commissioner Farnsworth, no, sir. At this time, there are none.
Is that going to be a road that they use to go into the subdivision or this new phase?
Do you want to speak to that? I mean, they are going to use that, but I know there are no improvements contemplated at this time.
Mr. Mayor, there is an access point on 24th. It's on the far eastern end of it, so that the people going out all the way to the far end don't have to go all the way through the neighborhood to get to the front necessarily, but it's far enough in the back that it would not be convenient for people to use as some sort of an additional cut-through. It was actually, I think, designed that way to minimize the impact on the neighborhood on the other side of 24th, as far as the amount of traffic that's going to flow onto 24th out of the neighborhood.
So they don't have to make any kind of improvements on State Road 26?
Not that we're aware of. The traffic study that they provided didn't indicate it was necessary.
Beyond what they did in the main entrance.
Yeah, beyond what they did at the main
I was
entrance.
about to say, right, that just got completed?
Beg your pardon?
That just got
Yeah.
completed, right? Yeah.
Okay.
Which is a nice turn lane, by the
Yeah,
way.
the majority of the traffic's going to come out of that new turn lane rather than on 24th because of its location in the back of the neighborhood.
Okay, other questions? Okay. Wendy, can you remind me the timeline here for this developers agreement? Because normally you do developers agreements earlier? Tell me, how do we get to, remind me of the time, how do we get to this moment right here with this agreement?
You'll have a development agreement for each phase that comes before you. So the applicant has applied for construction plan approval, and because of the timing, trying to move things along, we've gone ahead and you have to have 2 public hearings for your development agreement.
Have we already done one developers
No,
agreement
this
for
is
this?
well, yes, we have a development
Okay,
agreement
but that one wasn't
covering the
all
entire development. And you
Okay.
still have to do one for each
For
phase.
each phase? For
Right.
updates?
It'll cover
Changes?
just specifically that
Because I thought
phase.
the first one was the only one we were going to have. No.
No.
Okay.
So my
I'm sure
understanding
it's
is
my
that,
error.
that each phase will have one. That way you can have details that are applicable to that phase itself, that are just to do with
Is
the
that for
improvements.
staff's ability to hone in and focus on the phase? Because it seems overly onerous to break down development into different phases, but maybe it's easier on staff to do it that way.
I think
I
it's
see
that way.
Jamie working his way up here, so he
Okay,
might have an
other person
opinion.
can talk about it.
Mayor, Commissioners, you do have an overall agreement for the whole encompassing, it encompasses the whole development. But as the developer brings forth conceptual phase construction plans, individual details arise or need to be negotiated or worked out at that point. This is a 5-6 phase project, will be coursed out over a period of time. They work on the design as they go. And as part of that process, the city looks at opportunities where, you know, it could enlarge, upsize, change, design or whatnot for the convenience of the city or assistance for another project that the city has. So you will have some form of development agreement for each phase with some specific conditions. Maybe minor, maybe 1 or 2 conditions. If there's enough details, it may be a larger agreement. But that way, those details are hashed out over a period of years as phases are brought forward for construction plan approval.
And before you leave, Jamie, that's why I was confused. I knew we had done this already. We just haven't done it for the phases. So is there a reason why each of these agreements have to come before the commission, or why they can't just, it seems like this would be worked out between the developer and staff, and then if there's a conflict, the developer says, well, no, I think staff's being unreasonable, now I want to bring this new one to the commission. Okay, Wendy, make her way back to the podium.
These development agreements are provided by Florida statute, and it lays out specifically what you have to do one of those. The number of public hearings, the advertising, the type of things that can be included in a development agreement, and it specifies if you want to change things, how you do that. It's a whole process
So
that's
we're
set up.
required by state law
Right,
to come here.
yes.
Okay. Just thought
And
I
the
would
only
ask.
extra thing is you can do 2 public hearings, and you can have one of those public hearings, sometimes depending on the scheduling, you are able to have the Planning and Zoning Board, who serves as the local planning agency, serve it to do one of those public hearings, which sometimes with the scheduling works out great and sometimes doesn't.
I mean, it just seems like this board is generally the 20,000-foot level, and we communicate to staff, and then a lot of these changes
Yeah.
are minutia, you know, and it would move things along if we didn't have to. But if the state
Yeah,
says we have
yeah.
to do it, we have to do it. Mr. Nugent, did you want to?
Well, Mr. Mayor, I was just going to indicate that you're going to see more development agreements. This is actually us getting better.
Yeah.
Making sure, I know that in the last 2 or 3 years, we've gotten questions from the dais about, is the developer going to do A, B, or C? And we said, well, he's indicated he would. He's verbally indicated, or he or she has verbally indicated he would, but we don't have it in writing, so we're kind of at their goodwill. These are for items that are outside the scope of our land development regulations. An example would be, we want a sidewalk built from the front entrance to Easton to 24th, because we've heard the residents of 24th say, we'd like a sidewalk to Easton. So, and it's not in this development agreement, but this developer has agreed to construct that sidewalk. It's not a requirement of our LDRs, but it's an agreement that staff has reached. Because this obligates the city to do certain things, like the one that's coming up next is obligating the city to pay for certain infrastructure improvements that I feel like are our responsibility. That's part of why, in addition to state law, why the commission has to approve this, because we are obligating the city to do certain things.
Yeah, it makes total sense, and I think when the city is when the manager is obligating the city, it should come. I think when we're asking something from the developer, if the developer agrees to it, it seems like that could just be an agreement and we could all move on. If the developer says, hey, that's out of line, I want to go in front of the commission, then we just serve as the mediator. But we've spent enough time on it. I appreciate the clarification. Final argument, staff?
Yes.
Would the applicant like to make a final argument? Hearing none. Mr. Attorney, would you please advise the decision-making body one time tonight as to the applicable law and factual findings must be made to approve or deny the application?
Substantial and competent evidence, such as Wendy's testimony, Ryan's testimony as land planners, and our new Elena Jackson's testimony as well.
That's right. That's right. Well, I appreciate that. Okay, the board will enter into deliberations. The ordinary deliberations will have a motion to approve of conditions, continue or deny the application.
Move to approve.
Have a vote. That. Do I have a motion?
Yes.
I have a motion from Commissioner Coleman. Do I hear a second?
Second.
I have a second from Commissioner Martin. Any comments or questions on the motion on the floor from the dais? No. Do we have any public comments or questions on the motion on the floor? Okay. Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passed unanimously, and the second public hearing will be on November 22nd. We are still in quasi-judicial. Wendy, you're going to come back up. We still don't have an ordinance to read in. It's another development agreement. Everybody has been sworn. Everybody has been ex parte'd. I'm not going to go through the presentation order because no one new came in. Correct, staff? Yep. Thank you. Ms. Wendy, please give us the overview, and if there is no applicant presentation, please move into the staff's recommendation.
Right. So this is the development agreement for Phase 3. For the same development we just looked at, here's the master plan showing the location of Phase 3. This is about 43 acres. It's located in this same development that we just talked about on the east side of State Road 45. It's associated with a separate application for construction plan approval as well, which will be going before you in a future date soon. And it does implement our development approval ordinance and the development agreement that governs the entire development, which is a mixed-use development. It provides for the necessary infrastructure improvements that need to be done at the right time and for who's responsible and what each party would do. And as proposed, the agreement meets the requirements of the other regulations, the LDRs and the comprehensive plan. Again, remember the property rights element that you're considering, that this is consistent with the proposed agreement is consistent with the development. Boy, I need to. You're doing great. Let me go home. I'm having trouble talking. So as far as the property owner's rights, you have the 4 items that are part of our comprehensive plan in the property rights element and part of the Florida statutes. So as long as those are considered and this request is consistent and the approval of such request would be consistent with this, and that consideration is part of your local decision making. The specific conditions that are addressed in this development agreement for Phase 3 deal again with the first couple items that are the standard. We're putting in these agreements that the city would pay for anything over and above what the difference in costs over and above what the development requires. That the developer will provide points of connection for the utilities, and that we will reimburse for any expenses over and above, and for those connections, excuse me. And the developer will provide temporary roadway access during the construction process so that people can still access Easton Newberry Sports Complex. The developer, we talk about different kinds of the grass parking for overflow parking. There's specifications about sidewalks and the width of those being 7 feet. City's agreement to provide for the concrete electric poles and where those are located, and then the developer's provision for the 3-phase electric and the location of that, and what the city will reimburse for and do as opposed to what the developer is required to do. And then again, mentioning, the requirements for the agreement itself and when the reimbursements will happen. The HOA documents that will include a provision about that there's a park nearby, and go through the permitted uses in the final master plan, and surety are the same conditions that are in the 1B development agreement. And the recommended action is to pass this development agreement on first reading, and that you would announce the second public hearing date.
Thank you, Ms. Wendy. The applicant would like to make a presentation?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Commission. Chris Potts, Director of Engineering for JB Pro. Most of these improvements pertain to the entrance to Easton. We've met with Manager New as well as the staff just to go over making improvements to the Easton Park. So that's what most of these pertain to. So hopefully in the future we can help the city achieve their goals for the park itself. So I just wanted to pass that along.
We appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, we've heard the staff's report and recommendation. Public comment. Any members of the public here to speak to this agenda item? You have 3 minutes to do so. Seeing none, that will take us down. Were there any cross-examinations? Applicant, did you hear anything from staff that you'd like to address? Okay. Members of the decision-making body, do you have any questions of the applicant or staff? Mr. Mazon.
Mike, before Watson, that construction site back there, across the field, this is one of my concerns. Before they moved in, was it an agreement that there would be no development on that side, on that north side of them, before moving in?
Mr. Mayor, I don't think I'm probably best to answer that. I think Brian or Wendy probably would know what type of agreements prevented development on that land. I'll ask Brian to come up and see if he knows the answer to that. My guess is the answer would be no, that we wouldn't designate development on constraints on a parcel that wasn't the one that was being considered for development.
I can't think of any entity that would have the power to do so.
I mean, like, because of the cement and the dust and the sound.
Mr. Mayor, to my knowledge, you're absolutely correct. They wouldn't be able to bind an adjacent property owner necessarily because of that. But in research on the Watson facility, not specific necessarily to development to the north, but on that facility itself for other projects that they've been working on, to my knowledge, there's no outside agreement or no other additional agreements about what can develop to the north. To that end, though, that you can see on the chart there, or the picture there, on the far right, that area that doesn't show housing or the smaller lots for housing, that's the commercial area that'll act as the buffer between the more heavy industrial area and the residential area. So we do, in our own code, there is buffering requirements, and that's what that'll provide, is that space.
I know exactly what you're talking about there. I hear people say all the time, hey, I bought this, and the realtor promised me that road was going to be paved. The realtor promised me that ag field was going to, I would be looking at cows the rest of my life. We don't have the power to bind a private, that's why the private property bill of rights is in there. You know, we don't have the power to bind that. A past commission doesn't have the power to bind a present commission. So,
and to Brian's point, the commission's power is in zoning and buffering. If a cement plant wanted to go directly next to our cement plant, we would say, fine, you guys are compatible neighbors. If residential wants to go against it, then we'd say, fine, but we need a buffer in between, and our LDR specify what those buffering requirements are, depends on what the type of development next door would be.
Yeah, I was just, because even with the Newberry Hills, had some concerns when that Watson plant got up with the dust and all. So with houses being closer, I was just worried about the future residents having complaints, even with the buffer.
They will.
I mean, buffer, I hear the train, but it doesn't go 24/7, or it doesn't go 8 hours continuously.
Mr. Mayor, to that point, from what we've learned about the cement batch plants and the asphalt batch plants, by today's modern technology standards, if there is any kind of a dust release or something, it's an aberration. It's not the norm. It's a failure of a filter system or something, and it's a one-time kind of shot, and then they fix it. It should not be an ongoing problem.
Commissioner Martin?
To Commissioner Maison's point as well, those are opportunities in the realty exchange agreements with HOAs to point out nearby facilities that are in the neighborhood, like the rec center and stuff like that. Brian, maybe now is not the appropriate time, but I'm noticing to the south of Phase 3, you mentioned the commercial stuff. Where is there any connection to that property as far as the road goes?
Mr. Mayor, at this time, it doesn't appear that there's any connectivity to the commercial section, and that may be more by design to...
Is this the same map that we got when we did the overall?
I think there's more detail in this.
And this is also just a smaller area that's
Come
focusing on.
up here.
Yeah.
This also is just a segment of that overall master plan that's showing you the detail of those areas that are being considered now. So it doesn't show you the whole, everything. It's just focused on that area for this.
Well, Chris is right behind you.
Mr. Mayor, yes, in a future phase, that area will be connected internally. And then additionally, it is connected to the south, to the existing industrial park that's back there.
Because I seem to remember bringing up before the commercial having to go through the residential to get out.
Yes,
And were there roads there connecting, going through the residential before?
So the access point will be in the future to the east. That would be the northeast corner of the commercial, just for emergency access. But the main access point for the commercial will either be State Road 45 for the frontage, and then as well as a connection on the southeast corner to the existing industrial park that is stubbed out to the north.
Okay, was that on the original, and does it matter here?
I think it was on the original.
Yes. This phase does not have any connections to the commercial.
There's a phase in between.
Yes.
I understand. And I'm observing that there is no connection to the phase immediately to the south of Gray. And this doesn't look like the same map that we got originally.
Well, the map through the original developers agreement was what we call a bubble plan. That is just conceptual in nature as far as showing areas and generally shows connections. And then this is the final engineering construction plans that have gone through, the staff review and as consistent with the developers agreement.
And Mr. Mayor, if I understand Commissioner Martin correctly, the future phase that is immediately south of Phase 3 that is being contemplated, what I'm hearing Commissioner Martin say is that he expects connectivity to the commercial area that he doesn't see on this map, even though this map isn't necessarily speaking for the future phase. So when that future phase comes in, we will make sure it is addressed to the Commission's satisfaction. That they want connectivity or not, my anticipation is there should be at least one connection point between the residential and the commercial, although we should discourage that as being the primary connection point. We think primary connection point should be State Road 45 and the industrial park to the south.
And I remember this map, but sometimes I sit in more meetings, so I either saw it in P&Z or I saw it at the Little Red Schoolhouse at some point in time. I remember the bubble map, and correct me if I'm wrong, this is the phase that's going to go residential, moving towards light industrial as we go closer to the park eventually, the commercial park. Is that right? Or do I have this mixed up with a different development?
That's correct.
Okay. So when we talk about connecting it to the commercial park, it won't be connection from pure residential to pure commercial. There's going to be a phasing out of the residential into light manufacturing, light industrial, light retail, that kind of a thing, and then over into the commercial park. That's the idea, 20,000 foot level.
Additionally, the idea is that we know with the amount of residential and the idea of hopefully having some sort of retail that there would be a live-work situation. So we will provide.
Which also speaks to the buffering questions.
Correct. We would like to provide access in the future to the possibility of providing work and straight access from residents' houses.
All right. Does that answer your question, Mr. Martin? I think we're looking at different maps. So I think the map that you're remembering, Commissioner Martin, is the map of the whole thing in the bubbles, and that goes further to the south, right? We're talking about phase one here, which is just the residential. So I think, if I have it right, and correct me if I'm wrong, the blank spot and this corner here, right? That's where the next phase is going to be, and that's where you would see the office space and those kinds of things that we talked about last time. And if I'm wrong on that, correct me, but that's, when I zoom my mental picture out to the whole thing, that's where the commercial comes in over there.
That's correct.
I'm not questioning where the commercial and that sort of stuff is. I'm just unclear why we have
broken it down into phases.
I'm sorry. I understand where this stuff is going. However, I'm not clear why we're getting multiple maps, because I don't know what I'm approving when I'm looking at different. I mean, there's no connectivity to the properties on the south edge of the property. Whether they're there in the future or not, there's none there now. And there's none of the commercial is listed up in the front corner at the entrance off of 45 into Newberry Sports Complex. And that's what I'm struggling with.
Mr. Mayor, kind of 2 points. Number one, the areas that you see that are lightly shaded, those have not been approved yet, and so they'll have to come back for approval, and at that stage, we'll make, to the city manager's point, we'll make sure that whether the commission wants more connectivity or less connectivity, it'll be there. And then also, two, it's not uncommon when you have what you're referring to as the bubble plans, a preliminary master plan. That preliminary master plan can change fairly dramatically. The perimeter won't change, but where each of the bubbles kind of flows around as the property is developed, especially when it's going to be phased over a long period of time like this, different opportunities arise when the engineering is actually done on each of the individual phases. So there might be some internal adjustment of the roadways and things like that. And so the preliminary master plan is not something you would expect to necessarily see in stone. It's subject to evolution over time as the engineering progresses further down the road. So it's allowable in our code for the preliminary master plan, the internal roadways and such, to be moved around once the engineering dictates where the best course of pathways are, that kind of thing.
Let's let the applicant have a shot, because I think we're confused. I don't think this has changed significantly. You may have shifted a rotor here, but I think the commercial is still where the commercial was always going to be from the start.
Yes. Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, David McDaniel, M3 Avalon Woods LLC.
Yeah, the location of the commercial land is precisely where it was on the master plan that was approved back in June. There is no change. In terms of the specifics of the roadways, the main spine road, which runs directly south of the first roundabout into the park, shows, again, I imagine there may be a foot or two moving one way or the other, but it's precisely where it was shown on the master plan, the bubble plan, that is. And moving into the connectivity with the commercial area, we have, in fairness, we've been struggling with exactly how to put that together because, for example, in one of our earlier developments, after we had connectivity with the business park, we were asked to put a barricade, which frankly I was thrilled to do, so that we wouldn't have the trucks from the business park zipping through the residential neighborhood and creating danger for the residents. So when we get to that, we will figure that out. If it turns out that the desire is to have connectivity, a greater level of connectivity with the business park, we will certainly address that. Frankly, I'm hoping that we'll have a couple of buyer users by the time we get to that point, and we'll be able to discuss specifically what we're going to be connecting it to. But I actually opened up, I don't have the ability to post it on your overhead, but I'm looking at the master plan that was approved, and it's quite precise what exactly we asked for and what we were offered.
I think that map is just showing a larger area, and cutting it off is what's creating the confusion. So
that could be. Yeah, that could well be.
Tonight, we're just thinking about this phase.
Yeah.
And we're not thinking about the whole thing, so that's why it looks different.
That's a very good point. That's exactly. And you know what else about it is the master plan is actually far more rectangular than that photograph, that picture looks. It's actually quite a bit wider than it is tall. And so, and if anybody wants to look at my phone, you're welcome to do that.
No.
Thank you.
Okay. Did that clarify the confusion, Commissioner Martin? I want everybody to be comfortable with this because I really don't think that anything has changed from what was originally presented to us.
I'm not debating where the commercial is. I understand that the commercial is where the squares are, and I understand where the commercial was when we first looked at the map. You guys keep bringing that up. That's not my point. My point is, this map that I'm looking at now has no roads that connect to that commercial area. So it was changed between, if I'm remembering correctly, from the time we looked at the original map to the time that we're looking at this one right now. And one of the points that I brought up back then was the fact that the commercial did connect, and I had a problem for those residents of having the potential of commercial coming through there, through the residential thing.
So I bet what happened, they heard that comment, they took out those connections.
Well, I don't know that's for you to answer, honestly, but...
Well, you want to come back up, Mr. McDaniel? Because, I mean, what I heard you just say is the dark gray shaded area is the area that we're talking about right now. The light gray shaded area is the next phase, and you just admitted to trying to answer Commissioner Martin's concern
about
I'm sorry.
I really
connected.
was not trying to be combative. I was really just trying to answer the question, but I'm not certain I understand.
Is there roads connecting the commercial area to that residential road there?
Well,
in that map?
The commercial at the entrance into the park will have connectivity, of course, to the roads that are 16th, there.
The 16th, right?
To 16th, and primarily, though, to the unnamed road that's going north and south.
Because you had talked about maybe some like insurance office or something like.
Yeah, we would love to see.
Office.
Yeah, we've actually had conversations with a daycare center who may be at that entrance somewhere.
Okay. Were there, on that original map, were there roads that connected that commercial space on the south side to that other road that's running parallel?
Not what was finally approved. Let me take a look. No, it's not. There's no indication of any connectivity other than the connection that goes into the business park on the south east
and this
corner.
other one in the northeast corner, the little alley looking.
Yeah, the alley
Right.
for emergency
Okay.
access, yes.
Okay, okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
Other commissioner questions? Commissioner Farnsworth?
Just out of curiosity, what happened to phase 2?
I'm sorry, yeah, very good question. Phases 1 and 2 are 50-foot wide lots. As we got into this and acquired the additional property, the builders that we're working with were looking for a broader range of opportunities. So in phase 3, we have 60-foot wide lots. So for example, you'll be able to fit a 3-car garage on all of those lots. So you'll end up with a little larger house, a little bit more function, if you will, in terms of a third garage door. And then on the southwest side, we're going to be coming in with some 40-foot lots, and so those will be a little bit more affordable home prices. So they wanted a broader range of market, and so we're going to be able to go, whereas on a 50-foot lot, I don't know, prices were changing so fast that I don't know what to say the range is, but let's just say for ballpark, 275 to 315 on 50s, and you'll be able to get probably another 25,000 to 50,000 on each side of that with these additional lot sizes. So we're just adding different lot sizes is what we're doing.
And why are we approving phase 3 when you haven't not even started phase 1B yet? Or?
Well, again, because we have demand for the 50-foot lots and demand for 40s and 60s. So 1A is completed. Well, it's almost completed. But there's already homes under construction in there. And so the objective is we are a supplier of lots to these builders, and we just want to make sure that we're delivering the lots as they need them. And we built as many as we felt they needed in phase 1A. Phase 1B will be following behind that. We'll likely be building phase 1B during the time of building phase 3. And then phase 2 will follow behind that. So it's a matter of how sales go and how the market is and all that sort of thing. I apologize for confusing it up, but if you look at the flow of how it goes, it does actually make some sense going from north to south.
So you're planning on starting phase 3 the same time you start 1B?
Maybe before that. Yeah.
Is anything being done for the road on the far right of this phase 3 as it goes towards the back of the property? Is there anything being done to keep people from turning that into a racetrack?
Well,
which road are you talking about, Commissioner?
Is that the one running parallel to the north property line with the park? Is that what you're referring to?
It's on the furthest south road.
I see. It's the one in the future phase.
That goes into the future. Well,
Oh.
The long stretch, the
Yeah,
longest.
we'll
north-south,
address, the
east-west.
answer is we hadn't really necessarily addressed the specifics of how to calm the traffic, but
We have ideas.
then there's a lot
They
of.
seem to do it on their own
Yeah,
with street parking.
yeah, parking does help slow things down, and
yeah.
Are you done?
Are there? Oh, Tim, you messed me up now. Yeah, no.
Come back to it after.
Yeah, I'll come back.
All right, Commissioner Martin.
In my interpretation, the phase numbers are more related to geography than timeline.
for the most part.
Theoretically, right?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So if assuming this is approved, you'll have 40, 50, and 60 lot offerings for the builders and the
Yeah.
residentials.
That's right.
Okay.
Commissioner Farnsworth, you remember?
I do.
All right.
Are there going to be sidewalks on just one side of the road or two?
Yeah, in the new sections, we're going to have sidewalks on one side of the road, and had differing opinions on that. I can only speak from my own experience. Most of the neighborhoods I've ever lived in, actually, most of them didn't have sidewalks at all, and people just walked their dogs in the street, and it seemed to work okay. I'm not a fan of that necessarily, but yeah, so we'll have, it'll all be connected. There'll be crosswalks in places so you can get to the other side where there's other activities. But yes, we're going to have sidewalks on one side of the road in these new sections.
Other questions? Okay. Would the applicant like to make any final arguments?
Nothing at this time, thank you.
All right. We've already been advised of decision-making, we've already been advised of applicable law. Okay, board will enter into deliberations. If there are no deliberations, we'll entertain a motion to approve with conditions, continue, or deny. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I have a motion from Commissioner Martin, a second from Commissioner Coleman. Any comments or questions on the motion on the floor from the dais?
Roll call.
Any comments or questions on the motion on the floor from the public? Okay. Commissioner Coleman?
Aye.
Commissioner Farnsworth?
Nay.
Commissioner Martin?
Aye.
Commissioner Mazon?
Nay.
Okay.
That's not good.
I feel like we should have had some more deliberation there. Mr. Attorney, we're in quasi judicial. We did not hear any expert testimony against the application. So can you advise the board, we would, in order to reconsider this, we'd need somebody from the opposing side. I think when we're about to vote something down, it would be helpful if we had some deliberations about those concerns before. And with a board that is down one with the possibility of a tie, I think it's always fair to the applicant to be upfront about that at the same time. This is Commissioner Coleman.
Phase 3, after Phase 3 is where they're going to actually start, right?
Okay. Yeah, please come on down. And again, this is simply to say, we're pretty far deep into this process.
Because Phase 3, if that's where they're going to start, we already approved Phase 1.
This is the developer's agreement. We've already agreed on almost all of these points.
Yeah, that's the point I'm trying to make. So Phase 3, if we table this, just say, we're slowing the process up. So, go ahead.
Well, Phase 3, again, in terms of the sequence of development, Phase 1A was the first. Phase 3 will actually be the second. Phase 1B will be the third, if you will. But it's during Phase 3 that we're building we're upgrading and the entrance to the park. We're going to be building a rather elaborate entry monumenting both the subdivision as well as Newberry Easton Park. We're putting in a lot of improvements that will be substantially improving the visibility and presence of what's happening at the park. And if I'm not mistaken, in fact, I believe that the city is now talking about doing substantial improvements to the park property, parking and drainage and various other improvements, of which this will be a natural connection to. So so if there's any other questions, I'm happy to answer them, but I think that kind of covers.
Well, and hang on one second. Mr. New, correct me if I'm wrong, the last development agreement we did was the stuff we were asking the developer to do. This developer's agreement was the stuff that was giving the enhancements that we had agreed to do. So basically, we just kind of pulled a fast one on the developer here. We got the developer to do their stuff, and now we're not going to do our stuff.
Well, and Mr. Mayor, this development agreement kind of works both ways. The developer is agreeing to do a number of things that would be beneficial to the city and to Easton Park, and we're agreeing to do some things. I'll give you an example. We're upgrading the electric circuit. This agreement allows us to upgrade the electric circuit to not only to support the developer's need, but also to support some oversizing requirements that the city needs, that we're trying to do with harden our electric system. There are some improvements on 16th Avenue that are not required by any of the previous development agreements or the approvals that the development has gotten so far. The developer, through these types of negotiations, has agreed to upgrade it. If you know, when you go out there now, there currently is what I call Wild West parking on the entrance road going in. If we have overflow, you can just park any old where. The developer is enhancing that, putting sidewalks on both sides of the road. Now, we are agreeing to pay for one, but they're going to formalize that so that it is designated for overflow parking. So it's the 10 elements that Brian showed as the substantial elements of the development agreement that we're discussing. The Phase 3 construction plans are not here, so things like traffic calming, what we've done for traffic calming, do not show up. We've asked the developer to stub utilities out to the south side of the park because we need them. This is the most proximate location, it's the most economical way for us to get utilities to the south side of the park. So those are just a few of the elements that are included in the development agreement that is under consideration.
Before we move forward, I'm going to ask the clerk to swear in the manager, just to make sure we're following everything right. So if we can pause for 1 second, and Mike, would you get sworn in?
State your name, please.
Mike New?
Do you hereby swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
You can do swear.
Okay, and I think, Mr. Potts, did you want to, you're good? Okay, so I mean, and Mr. Attorney, correct me if I'm wrong, if we have a motion that dies 2-2, either Commissioner Farnsworth or Commissioner Mazon could make a motion to reconsider.
Correct.
I would ask that if neither of you are willing to make a motion to reconsider so that the city can fulfill our obligations, you would at least consider making a motion to reconsider to table it until we have a full board. I did not anticipate this being 2-2. I knew that Commissioner Farnsworth had voted no originally because he didn't like the way that the commercial went. I didn't know that would apply to this developer's agreement here, but I didn't anticipate, so I didn't do a good job, and I own that, and I apologize to the applicant. Normally, if I think that there's an opportunity and there's not a full board, I give the applicant the opportunity to say, I'd prefer to wait until there's a 5-person board here so that we're not in this situation. So I don't know if you've heard enough to make a motion to reconsider because you just changed your mind with a better understanding of what's before us. If not, then I'd ask for a motion to reconsider so that we could at least put a motion on the floor to table it till Commissioner Clark gets back, and that way the developer, who has agreed to an awful lot of concessions that are in benefit to the city of Newberry and have nothing to do with Commissioner Farnsworth's original objection to the changing of the type of commercial at the front, still has the opportunity to move forward with all of this work.
Did I take a motion?
I need a motion. It can only come from either Commissioner Farnsworth or Commissioner Mazon.
I'll motion for it to be tabled. Give it a fair shot.
Well, we need a motion to reconsider first. I got 2 parliamentary experts.
Motion to reconsider is the first item to be addressed. So you would move to reconsider this item. You are on the successful side of the vote in this instance. So you're moving to reconsider is what your motion is.
So if you move to reconsider, that means we can put it back on the floor. And then if you still are not willing to move forward with the developer's agreement, then what I would ask for is a motion to table it until we have a full board.
Okay, I'll wait for that table.
Motion, we need to do a reconsider first. So you make a motion to reconsider?
That's not saying that you agree with it.
Right. That's just saying we're putting it back on the floor for.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, so do I have a second for the motion? Do I need a second for reconsideration? Yeah, do I have a second? But that can come from anybody on the board.
Correct.
Okay, I have a motion to reconsider from Commissioner Mazon, seconded by Commissioner Martin.
Right.
Okay, so now we can reconsider it. At this point,
Take a vote on the motion to reconsider.
Oh, that's right.
Mr. Mayor.
How about comment on the motion?
Comment?
well, do we have any comment on the motion for the dais to reconsider? I don't think it's debatable. I thought when we reconsider it was just the board. Yeah. Okay, so roll call vote. Commissioner Coleman? Aye. Commissioner Farnsworth?
No.
Commissioner Martin? Aye. Commissioner Mazon? No. This is your
This
motion
is
to
to
reconsider.
I'm confused.
Yeah. This is just your motion to reconsider.
By money that you go with it.
Right.
We understand that.
Right, so you
Okay,
just.
yes, I'll reconsider. Fine,
Okay.
yeah.
Now we have the
Sorry.
topic. That's fine, you're fine, right?
That's okay.
Now we're
It's
back
our
on
first
the
go around
board,
here.
right? And,
To be a parliamentary expert.
yeah, that's why we've got Tim here and Scott. Okay, so it's back on the table and. On the floor. To Commissioner Coleman's points, right? A motion to table it is beneficial. It gives us the opportunity, but it does slow everybody down, right? So I would ask us to go back to the deliberation aspect here, because I think that this developers agreement has nothing to do with houses. It has nothing to do with density. It has nothing to do with any of those issues that I understand are kind of confusing. This is about the things that the developer has agreed to do for the city and the things that the city has agreed to do for the developer. So voting no on this changes nothing except the nature of the agreement. It doesn't change the fact that they get to build houses. It doesn't change the fact of how many houses they get to build. It doesn't change the fact of the cars that come. None of that changes. And I'd like a little bit of conversation. So I'd like to deliberate on the consequences of a no vote here, because I don't think that we've done a good job. And again, I take responsibility for that because I was not anticipating this to be controversial. So Mr. Potts, I know you wanted to say something earlier.
Well, I think, Mr. Mayor, just jumping in for a second, there's certain items that may be bothering the commissioners.
Which is?
For example, the connectivity issue between commercial and residential, the separate entrance for the commercial, the traffic calming devices that may need to be established. And I think the motion could be...
Hang on one second, Scott, because we're in quasi judicial and none of those things are part of this motion.
Well, let me finish my sentence, Mr. Mayor, and perhaps that will alleviate the commissioner's concern that at a future time, that your approval be conditioned or contingent upon those items being addressed at some future stage in this proceeding. So they don't have to necessarily be addressed at this point and fixed at this point, but that the developer be required at some point to come back and address these issues that are of concern by the commissioners.
I agree with that, absolutely.
And that may
help
solve or alleviate the concerns.
Okay, Mr. Potts first. He's been waiting patiently to.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Commission. So this developers agreement is just a formal written agreement between the developer and the city to either, for the developer to build certain aspects for the city, or the city to reimburse the developer for other aspects, like utility upsizing, the power poles, to help save the city some money. The developer is willing to use his contractor to build some improvements to 16th. As Mr. New mentioned, the overflow parking to the park. This agreement has nothing to do with the actual engineered plans, the design plans, or the construction of those plans. The Phase 3 plans are actually going through staff review right now. Any items that are concerning as far as traffic calming, interconnectivity, or alike, we can address with the staff as we go through the review process. The developers agreement, we've met with the city several times to figure out how both parties could work together for the same common goal to hopefully save some money for either party. So that's why we're here presenting the agreement for approval for staff and the commission.
Okay, Mr. New, would you speak? Because I'm trying to think of one reason to say no here, because this agreement seems entirely beneficial to the city of Newberry. But tell us, let's just say the commission is universally against it, says no. What are the consequences of that no? What happens to Avalon Woods and the development? Where do we go from here?
Well, Avalon Woods has vested rights by way of zoning, PD zoning, to bring forth a set of construction plans. If those construction plans comply with our LDRs, then I believe, and I believe the city attorney would agree with me, that even a no vote by the city commission would be overturned by a judge, that with these vested rights, if they bring construction plans forward that meet our LDRs, then we are compelled to approve them, and they're going to build houses. Now, so they are going to build houses. This agreement are 12 items that we would like for them to do. It's kind of a side deal. These are not things that are in our LDRs that we are agreeing with them to do. So one of those would be, one of the items is that they're required to get a surety device. We want them to get a surety device. That protects the city of Newberry. So I think that's an item that we want them to do, and we should consider that. If there are items out of these 10 lists that we don't like, then I'd like to determine from the commission's consideration what they want removed out of here. But things like, they're going to be making improvements on 16th Avenue. This device says, when you make those improvements, you have to build a temporary road. You can't just block traffic to Easton while you build the new road. You have to provide a means of ingress and egress to our park while you're doing that. If we pull that out, he tears up the road, he's just going to block it off. He potentially, if we don't have a good partnership, block it off and say, I'll be done when I'm done. You guys figure out another way to get into the park. I mentioned utility connections. Down at the point where at the very southern point of the development, where we have, of the park, where we have the baseball building. That system is in there on a temporary pump station, and we don't have adequate fire control back there. We can extend them from the other side of campus, which is a long ways away, or we can stub them out of this subdivision. This development agreement says the developer will stub those utilities out, electric, water, and sewer, to the southern point of the subdivision because it's beneficial to us. The parking improvements and the sidewalks down both sides of 16th Avenue are in this agreement. The upgrading of the electric circuit, which is a partnership. We're paying to put new poles out there. They're paying for the conductor on the poles, just something we've agreed to because there's benefit. When that electric system went in out there, we didn't have the electric system territory that we do today. We owned Easton, and we had the right through a territorial agreement to serve Easton, and that was it. We didn't serve 1 square foot outside the Easton property. Then subsequently we negotiated and picked up this 400 acres of territory, and the electric circuit is undersized. So through a partnership with a developer, we're upsizing the electric circuit, even upsizing it so that in the future it extends around. We'll loop it out so that we have better reliability when a car hits a circuit on the west side of State Road 26. We hope to have an east side connection to some substation that will allow us to turn power back on within an hour and not wait 6 hours while we change out 3 poles to get it all fixed. So really what we're asking the commission to consider here are these 10 specific points that will not affect the developer's ability to build the houses in phase 3 as long as the phase 3 construction plans comply with our land development regulations.
Mike, how many of these 10 did our staff put in there? How many did we create, and how many did the applicant create? Ballpark, remember?
10.
Five. Staff put all 10 of these.
Yes.
So in a quasi-judicial, where the only expert testimony we've heard is our own staff saying these 10 points are beneficial, the developers agreed to them, there's been no expert testimony offered from an opposing side. Our staff recommends this. Again, it doesn't change the development in terms of the houses, right? It changes all of the things that Mike just talked about. That's all that's on the table here
Correct.
tonight. That's all that's on the table here tonight. We're not approving another development. We're not approving more houses. We're not changing any distancy. We're just saying, hey, we want to ask the developer to go above and beyond, and they've agreed to do it.
Correct.
And we voted on the previous developer's agreement, which was with the same developer, same project. There's some more stuff we're asking them to do, right? And we've got skin in the game here as well. Okay, so any final from the applicant, any final arguments that we haven't hit Are there any deliberations? Are we clear on what we're doing here tonight? The only thing we're doing here tonight, this is, in my mind, this is really straightforward. I get Commissioner Farnsworth voting against it when they commercial changed, because he has a record of doing that, that's consistent. But this developer's agreement has nothing to do with that commercial. That commercial didn't change in this developer's agreement. The amount of commercial didn't change in this developer's agreement. The amount of houses didn't change in this developer's agreement. All we're doing by voting no is we're saying yes in the first developer's agreement, you're gonna do everything you wanted to, and now we're not gonna do what we agreed to do. If I could have a head nod of, okay, I had it wrong and I'm gonna vote yes for it now, I just need one. If not, then I would ask for a motion to table it till Commissioner Clark gets here, because I would hate for all of this work and all of the incredibly generous things that this developer has agreed to do, that I'm very excited about that for Easton, then I would ask to table it so we can try this one more time, and I'll do a much better job of front-loading the conversation next time. I did not anticipate this being controversial, so I take the burden and the blame for that. Because normally on controversial things, I have a conversation with you guys first, so we can ask all these questions off of the dais ahead of time.
I have a couple questions.
Commissioner Farnsworth.
Mike, the city's gonna reimburse the developer $15,000 for construction of the sidewalk? Where are we doing that?
Correct, because we acknowledge that the sidewalk brings value to us. It's a sidewalk that we would construct. The developer agreed to build one on one side of the road, to put curbing on both sides of the road, and to can stabilize a grassed area for grass parking, all at his expense. The second sidewalk, we agreed to pay at his cost, which is $7.50 a square foot.
Okay, and the, let's see, the city's gonna reimburse the developers $7,900 for 2 phases of 337 ACSR electrical conductor?
Correct. That is a cost savings measure for today while we're out there working on those poles. The developer needs a single phase, it's a 3-phase circuit. So we are paying to upsize the second and the third phase that would serve to the city's benefit. Further in the development agreement, it says when the developer starts phase 5, which is when he would need that load, that the developer will repay us back that $7,900. So it's a short-term investment on the city, and we get paid back in full, some in either 36 months from the date of this agreement or when the commission approves phase 5 construction plans.
And who's gonna be in charge of making sure that happens?
Me.
Okay. With this agreement, are we agreeing to the site plan?
No, sir. No, sir.
So that needs to be brought back before the city commission?
The last step for phase 3 construction is approval of the phase 3 construction plans, and eventually there will be a phase 3 plat. Both of those will be before the commission before, they couldn't start construction on homes until the plat's approved. And they'll start construction. They'll probably do construction of utilities and infrastructure first. You'll probably see phase 3 construction plans first, and then some few months after those are approved, I would expect that the phase 3 plat will be coming through.
Okay. I'll go ahead and I'll support this then.
Okay. Call question? Do I need a motion again? No, we've already got, well, I need a motion.
You should get a motion.
Yeah. So moved. We have a motion from Commissioner Coleman. Can we put the recommended motion back up on the board? I have a motion from Commissioner Coleman. Second. Second from Commissioner Martin. Roll call, just, okay, all those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passed unanimously. Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate the reconsideration.
It was a misunderstanding.
And it's perfectly fine. These are complicated, and there's a ton of steps. And I did not do a good job introducing it. Again, my fault. My bad. I apologize to the developer. Just giving Mr. Coleman behind you there a little taste of what's coming up for him next time he brings the developer. Yeah. Okay, and that closes our quasi-judicial. And that moves us to what the second public hearing on November 22nd.
Thank you. That's just required by statute.
Yes. Thank you. That's going to close our public hearings and ordinances and move us to agenda items. Commissioner Ball.
Can we move agenda item,
15?
Yeah,
Something else, right?
do I?
I say it's a new number.
Yeah.
A new item 9, Southwest 15th Avenue extension,
Right, and,
the new 13, or new 8.
yeah, make that the new, so that the ones in the audience can go home way before I do, and I'm jealous.
Got any objections to making that? Sure about that one. Okay, and then we will shift the Southwest 15th, and I think that is new item 7 on the agenda at this point. So, Mike, shuffle the papers around and tell us about this exciting acquisition of right-of-way that we're hoping for.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We've been talking about now for 6 months or so the extension of Southwest 15th Avenue west of 260th Street to connect with County Road 337. We talked about it extensively during the budgeting process for this year, and the commission authorized us to move forward with that project. Tonight, I bring to you for consideration what I would characterize as step number 1, which is obtaining the land rights so that we can construct a roadway eventually extending Southwest 15th Avenue. Recommended action is to authorize the city manager to execute each of 3 agreements to acquire right-of-way and land rights necessary to extend Southwest 15th Avenue from Southwest 260th, County Road 337. So 260th is right there at the city cemetery, where it takes a hard bend, and the road 15th ends there, and you can take 260th, come out to State Road 26. This will allow us to continue west to 337. Just more overview, the planned roadway requires a 75-foot wide right-of-way, and so we negotiated with property owners to obtain that right-of-way. Planned roadway elements per feedback from the commission are to pave travel lanes, sidewalks, which currently staff is interpreting as one sidewalk, one side of the road. Currently, staff is interpreting as one sidewalk on one side of the road or the other, open swells and utilities. And frankly, utilities is the real driver in this. The commission approved in our CIP some years ago the extension of a water main from the cemetery at 260th and 15th over to County Road 337. This is the best route to get there, is to go ahead and extend through here. So we were seeking, the first part of this project will be survey and construction of a water main. So there are 6 parcels total, 4 property owners. One of those property owners is the city. Figure dealing with the city is the most challenging aspect of all of that, so we'll deal with the adjacent 3 property owners first, and then circle back and see if we can't have success negotiating with ourselves. So the property owners are Paul and Tammy Coleman, James and Connie Coleman, and Jason and Mary Coleman. They are related, in case anyone, if that's a burning question for anyone, they are all related.
How are they related?
They are brothers. And one thing I wanted to highlight is that the city is not offering to purchase, we didn't get it appraised in the purchase value. From the initial conversation with each of the Coleman families, they've always expressed an interest in helping the city. They realize that this is beneficial. They all live proximate to this. And so that has been overarching, and frankly, it's a lot easier to negotiate when folks are looking at it from the city's perspective on what's going to help the city out. So we negotiated with the parties and we developed these agreements. They're very similar in what they say other than they're specific to unique parcels. So here's just kind of a schematic that shows that gray area is the 75-foot wide right-of-way. We are trying to acquire those land rights now in a large amount of public utility easements outside of that right-of-way area to extend the water main through. Our future plans include extending a water main west to County Road 337, north to State Road 26, and south to wherever our demand is. So eventually that will go all the way to 15th, no, it will go all the way to 30th and loop in at Champions Park. I don't have a 5-year plan for that, but that's exactly what our water master plan says should happen there. So, so those are, you know, kind of what we plan to do. Just given some details here of the agreement. This is the essence of the agreement, is that the property owners will convey land by warranty deed and land rights necessary for us to construct the extension of Southwest 15th Avenue. There's an existing plat on the property. It is called Castle Heights plat, circa 1925, and the property owners have agreed to vacate that plat. And because trying to work with that plat, that gives them land rights. They certainly have some land rights for that. How we would work through those land rights is very difficult. So what we've offered is that we would waive applications fees for a future land use change and for zoning. We're not guaranteeing an outcome. That's really the board's consideration. But the commission is now offering to waive those fees for each of these property owners when they bring those items in. The deeds and the easement will be held in an escrow account until construction of the road. I say roads and utilities. Actually, the agreement says until construction of the utilities begins. We'll construct a 12-inch water main through the road right-of-way, and we'll provide appropriate stub-outs, points of connection, fire hydrants in accordance with our own LDRs. And those points of connections will be available for future development if that land ever is contemplated for development. We'll also construct an 8-inch water main from the right-of-way going north. It will pop out at Jimmy Durden Park and connect to an existing dead-end water main that's there today. And we've agreed that once construction, the city is agreeing that once construction contracts are let for the roadway improvement, that the city will construct a fence along the north and the south boundary line of the proposed roadway. The idea is we'd like to keep the cows on private property and not on a public roadway. And since they're not asking for compensation for the land, the value of the fence would be the value that they get out of donating this property to the city. Here's the old plat. It's the Castle Heights plat. It's been around since 1925, and gosh, we've talked about it with our planning staff and our utility staff, trying to figure out how to develop that. It's currently zoned to agriculture. Get utilities in there and develop Castle Heights would be quite the challenge. And we're up for challenges, but we think it is likely easier. Yeah, Commissioner Farnsworth voted for this. No, it's probably easier just to vacate it and start over, and by including the waiver of fees for a land use change and rezoning, I think it's a fair offer to these property owners. So, and the city makes no representation. Very explicit in the agreement is we're going to extend the 12-inch water main to 337. We're required to by this agreement. We are not required to extend the water main up and down 337 per the agreement. We have every intention of doing that, and at least going north, the CIP requires us to do that. If we don't connect it to anything, it's of very little benefit. So our plan is to go north today with the project that Jamie's working on, and we'll go south when there's a demand to that end. Also explicit in the contracts is the city makes no representation regarding construction of Southwest 15th Avenue. Now, the commission has directed us to pursue it, but the agreement compels us to build a water main. It doesn't compel us to build Southwest 15th Avenue. We do anticipate getting started on the design shortly, though, so the design will be ready. And Mr. Mayor, that concludes my presentation. I'm available for questions if the commission has any.
Okay, so we have any?
And
You have any questions? Commissioner Farnsworth?
Mike, what kind of fence are you planning on building?
We've included in the agreement an FDOT field fence. It's the one, it's a pretty heavy-duty farm fence. It's the one you see on the side of most state highways when they build them. It would be what I'd characterize as a field fence with a 4-inch wood post. It's some spacing, but we went ahead and referenced the FDOT index to make sure that they got the quality that was anticipated.
So they're in agreement with it?
Yes, sir, they signed. The agreements that are in your backup are executed by each of the 3 property owners.
I mean, they're in agreement with that type of fence as well?
Yes, sir.
Well, I think a white picket fence would be nice, but hey.
It's not approved yet. So
And any chance of getting sidewalks on both sides of the road?
Absolutely. We could get sidewalks on both sides of the road. It's really up to the commission's pain tolerance for cost. And so if the commission says that right now, cost for concrete is $7.50 a square foot, we know that from the presentation. 5-foot sidewalk would mean that that's about $44, $45 per lineal foot of sidewalk. But we're game. If the commission says fund it, we'll go for it.
Or we could wait till the developer builds and we could have a developer's agreement. They could build it, we can put it in the developer's agreement.
That's picking at a sore point, Mr. Mayor. I don't know if I'd go for that.
Any other questions?
Nope.
Commissioner Martin?
I just want to express my appreciation to the landowners for being agreeable to this at the benefit of the city. My hat's off to you. Thank you very much.
Any other questions? I was kind of disappointed in the fence. I like to dodge cows every once in a while. It's called adventure driving. You know, we used to do it a lot in Newberry.
Open range.
Yeah, right. Commissioner Coleman.
I just want to, they are family and, but I've had no, I just want.
You don't stand to financially gain from them donating land to the city?
Well, they could, but they won't.
Ricky, you probably would not have to recuse, but it costs no money to file a complaint. My advice would be to go ahead and recuse yourself, even though you're not within the realm of the conflict of interest statute, and it does not inure to your private gain. My advice is just, because you share a last name, to recuse yourself.
And the city attorney's advice trumps the city manager's advice. I'd listen to him and not me.
Okay.
I don't know. Look at them. They clearly can't stand him out there. Okay, so Commissioner Coleman, are you going to take the city attorney's advice and recuse yourself?
Yes, I would.
Okay. So the recommended action, authorize the city manager to execute each of the 3. Do I have that motion? I have a motion from Commissioner Farnsworth, a second from Commissioner Martin. Any comments, questions on the motion on the floor for the dais? Comments, questions, motion on the floor from the public? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye, Angus Bull.
Angus Bull. Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
Just one. I appreciate
by the way.
Appreciate the vote for yes. One thing I failed to mention is that if we don't commence with construction of the water main within 36 months, all the property just goes back to them. So we'll be back to square one on that project.
Yeah, so you forgot to say that before, until after the
yeah.
Jamie, can we do this in 36 months? Commencing just means we stick a shovel in the ground, right?
Issue a notice to proceed. Correct.
Commissioner Coleman.
I'm suggesting that we move number 8 next, which is 14.
Land for the wastewater plant?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, why didn't you say that to begin with? We got all this done at one time.
COVID, I get to blame everything on COVID.
Okay, so 7, was 15th. Well, that's already 8, right? So that's already the next one.
Dallas had a presentation.
Right, but I
in
thought we
between.
swapped. I thought we just moved, I just thought we moved those. I can't remember the motion now. Did you just move it, or did we swap it?
I don't
We just
remember.
moved it. Okay, well, Amy said we just moved it. So do I have a head nod to move old number 14
to 8.
to new number 8? Everybody, we're just trying to confuse staff all over the place.
Yeah.
I never did get to say motion passed unanimously with Commissioner Coleman recusing himself. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Sorry, man.
That's all right. There, everybody's jumping ahead on me. Mike, that's still you, land acquisition, and I wanted to add my gratitude to the family for moving that project forward. I think it's going to be good for your family and for the city of Newberry in the long run as well, so hopefully.
Absolutely, and it really was a genuine pleasure to work with the Coleman families on that project and look forward to getting the roadway project started or the water main project started as well. Mr. Mayor, this is a consideration, an agenda item considering the acquisition of land to expand the city's wastewater plant. The staff report that was included in your agenda pack has an erroneous recommended action, so we prepared new ones, and they were on the dais. I think we initially said that we wanted to acquire 0.21 acres, when actually, Mr. Mayor, we want to acquire 93 acres. So the recommended action for this is to acquire 93.4 acres of land valued at and agreed upon at $12,500 per acre. And that should say per acre, Mr. Mayor, not the whole 93 acres for $12,500.
That's the case, let's move it right now.
Yeah, so to facilitate upgrade and expansion of the city's wastewater treatment facility as described in the attached contract documents and to schedule closing. So, Mr. Mayor, just a brief overview. As the Commission is well aware, the existing wastewater facility is reaching the end of capacity, and it currently is on a 104-acre site. A few months ago, FDEP issued an administrative order to the city, to our wastewater operating permit that requires enhanced treatment levels by 2026, treatment levels that we cannot meet with our existing facilities, and we require new and upgraded facilities. That administrative order addresses nutrient removal, biosolids treatment, and an additional staffing requirement. The first step of expanding a wastewater plant is the planning phase. We are 75% complete with our planning document. Those documents are referred to as a wastewater facilities plan and a preliminary engineering report. So the new wastewater plan, even though it's incomplete, I know certain information. Our planned capacity for the new facility will be 1.1 MGD. That's what Newberry needs. We've talked about a regional plant, and I think it will be a regional plant. The whatever capacity an Arch or a Trenton or a High Springs needs will be added on top of the 1.1 MGD that Newberry needs. But our share, our planning document is going to suggest that we need to expand the capacity to 1.1 for our needs. That planning document also suggests that we need 63 acres for effluent disposal and additional acres, and 15 additional acres for biosolids processing, composting. So a total of 78 acres are needed. At our existing site, the properties to the north and the east are currently developed or mostly developed. I guess on the southern eastern end is still vacant. But the best areas to consider for acquiring new property that's adjacent to our plant are to the west and to the south. One owner controls all of that, Ms. McElroy. She has 93 acres. I believe it's spread across 5 or 6 parcels, but she's the sole owner. But she desires to sell all 93 acres. She's unwilling to sell a portion. For negotiation, we obtained 2 independent real estate appraisals. The appraisals came through, surprising for us, but beneficial for negotiations at $4,000 and $6,400 per acre. Less than half of what the city paid to expand its wastewater plant, paid for land more than a decade ago. We negotiated a price of $12,500 per acre. That was based more on real estate comparisons. We were aware of property of similar size and magnitude, location, and what those selling prices were in the $12,000 per range, $12,000 per acre range. We've negotiated, and staff believes that that is a good deal for the city, and notes that we paid $10,000 per acre back in 2009. Those are some of the comparisons that we found. We found 3 other comparisons. 2 are completed, and 1 is contractually agreed upon, but has not been closed yet. Funding sources for the commission's reminder: we will pay for our wastewater plant and the land that's acquired to allow us to expand through the wastewater development fees that we collect. Every time someone issues a building permit, people pay their share of debt service, and we use those development fees to expand our treatment plant or our wastewater system when it's time. We are already approved in the Florida State Revolving Fund Loan Program. We've used those in the past. It's the best tool out there. Currently, interest rates are right around 0, and they currently have a debt forgiveness where 50% of the money you get would be grant. So we're in that program, and this year the Water Management District, their Springs program, has recommended a grant of $700,000 be programmed. There should be a K there for land acquisition this year. That is stuck in Tallahassee somewhere, but their staff has recommended an award of $700,000 for land acquisition. So just some more details. The total purchase for the 93 acres is $1.1 million at $12,500 per acre. Requires a $50,000 deposit that we will make if approved by the commission. Closing date is scheduled for December 31st or sooner. And per the agreement, the seller retains some rights to cut hay from the property and to graze cattle on the property for up to 1 year. And subject to a lease agreement, it's the city's intention that if we don't have anything else going on with the property, that we would extend those leases until it was time for the city to do something with the property. And very important to mention is just addressing the city's risk, because when you write a $1.1 million check or contemplate writing a $1.1 million check, you need to be thinking about what are the risks. If the commission approves this tonight, these are the contingencies that are built in that would protect us moving forward. So the agreement requires approval by the city commission. That's what we're considering tonight. We're doing some feasibility studies, and they have to be acceptable. If we find out from geotechnical evaluation that the site is unsuitable for a wastewater plant, we can back out. We get our deposit back. No harm, no foul. If either the DEP or the Water Management District come back and say, we're not going to fund you, you're out. If you want it, it's your cash. We have the ability to back out, get our deposit back, no harm, no foul. So we are working to make sure that by December 31st, we've got all those things lined up. But just wanted to advise the commission of the risk mitigation that we've put in place so that their investment is not at risk. So, Mr. Mayor, that concludes my presentation. I'm available for questions if you have any, and I'll remind the commission of the recommended action.
Okay, so this is the culmination of a lot of work. Obviously, we are being mandated by the state, right, that we have to change our facility. Those requirements are somewhere in the range of about a 500% increase in terms of regulations and operations and those kinds of things. This site is right next to the existing site, so people kind of expect, everyone who's around knows that the site is there. I understand that there are some other conversations about things that could go on here, and I understand that some people have taken some ideas, right, that are really up here in the oddball idea phase, and they've kind of gone around and said, oh, right, and I just want to make it clear, the only thing we're contemplating on this site right now is the regional wastewater facility plant. Everything else is a conversation, and as you know, in this world we have lots of conversations, and about 99 out of 100 don't come to fruition And every once in a while, one does, and then we all get excited because we get, you know, a new business or something in town, you know. So, I would say, because I think, it bears a public conversation when an appraised land comes in, an appraisal of a little over 4,000, and we're offering 12.5, that does warrant a conversation, in the public. And there was a large parcel right next door that sold really close to that amount. I can't quite remember the exact amount now off the top of my head. And we know with that connection of 15th, all the opportunities that are going to open up and down 337. So, you know, we want to be fair to the landowner. And so I understand the criticism that could come from saying, well, you're offering somebody 3 times the appraised value, right? And say, well, why are you giving her special treatment? Why are you offering somebody 3 times what land is said to be valued? But again, a large parcel literally right across the street sold for a similar amount, and that was before the conversation about connecting 15 to 337 and all the possibilities that opens up for people who own land up and down 337 to look at development opportunities and those kinds of things. So I think it's a fair price. Even though it's not what the appraisal said, I think, you know, if you went back and with some new information, maybe the appraisal would come back differently. So that's kind of my piece on it. Any other questions? Commissioner Farnsworth.
So Mike, you said you had 2 appraisals done?
Yes, sir.
And they both came in at roughly
One
the
at
same?
4,000 and one at 6,400 per acre.
And how do they justify that?
They had comps, but they didn't have local comps. And so, you know, which we found, I mean, real estate appraisers are like engineers and architects, you know, they certify what they find. So I don't challenge what they brought, but I did note, and the appraisals are in your backup, that some of the property that they were evaluating was not necessarily in Newberry. And I think it predated some of the land acquisition that staff ran across. So we were aware of the land deal that the mayor was talking about just across the street, and so was the seller. She was intimately aware, and she reminded us routinely that, hey, that piece over there sold for in excess of $12,500. Why are you suggesting I should take $4,000 an acre? Right. The RV park property north, that was 95 acres, almost the exact same size, and it sold for a little over $12,000 per acre. No utilities, similar highway frontage, and there was one more that was a little over $16,000 per acre. So the comps that we found supported the 12.5. The 2 appraisals were really low, and I don't know why, but we are reevaluating the appraisals as we speak, just to make sure that they felt comfortable and those were the right numbers.
I'm just wondering why we're paying somebody to appraisals whenever they don't come back with an accurate amount.
Well, we're required by state law to get 2 appraisals on an acquisition this large, and these folks are licensed and certified. It was a head scratcher, but you know, from the initial conversation, what the suggested value of the land was, those appraisals really helped us move the value down to what we eventually settled on. The thought initially was they were probably worth north of $25,000 an acre, and not only did staff believe that was too high, but it was also exceeded what staff felt was affordable for the project we were trying to undertake.
Okay.
Well, if you look at the state of 337 and the chip seal nature of the road to the south, it's a little different than having property on State Road 27. So, you know, anybody that wants to do something there in terms of developer, they're going to look at that road and they're going to say, well, I'm going to have to repave 337. That's going to be $1 million, right, for my section. So, I mean, I don't know any land in Newberry that's $6,500 an acre anymore. But I also know that it's hard to find big tracts of land like this that are, and then to compare all the apples, it's not, nothing's ever apples to apples. You know, it's always, well, this one's got a state road. Well, this one's, you know, I don't know, close to being able to hook up to sewer, something like that. You know,
Correct.
There's always a little bit different.
Correct.
Other questions, comments? Okay. Well, do I have a motion to authorize city manager to execute this? I need a motion before I can go to the public. I had a motion from Commissioner Maison, a second from Commissioner Farnsworth. Any comments or questions on the motion floor from the dais? Hearing none, do we have any public comments or questions on the motion on the floor? Hearing none? He's always trying to tease me over here. See?
Well, just realistically, to the point of the concerns about people that are out there, how should we talk about that a little bit? What is really, I mean, even if we did anything else on this property, Mike, can you just go through the stages or steps that we will be going through to notify the public, to talk about any other changes to that property?
And that's good. I really anticipated.
Just talk about,
right.
I know we're just talking about the wastewater, but, you know, if any of those other ideas get more traction, let's be transparent with the public about what other steps happen between now and then.
Well, and can I add to that, because Commissioner's making a good point. I really expected there to be more conversation that would naturally get us there. But when we talk about the wastewater, one of the differences between the facility we have now and the advanced, can you talk about the wetlands and the differences in odors and those kinds of things from what we already experience now right next to Country Way and what we will experience with an advanced treatment facility?
Well, I'll start with Part B and then get back to Part A. So with the new treatment facilities, currently our effluent disposal portion, which is what do you do with the water once you're done treating it, we use a process called spray application. We have big Rainbird irrigation guns and we spray it all over our site and it percolates into the ground. From a land use perspective, it's not particularly efficient. So we are looking for a more efficient disposal technology. One is something called rapid infiltration basins, where you construct a big pond and you put water in there and it infiltrates way more rapidly than through a spray gun. An extension of that is one called constructed wetlands, which is what the mayor suggested. Constructed wetlands, water percolates faster than spray irrigation. And there's vegetation planted in the basins that will remove nutrients as it goes through. So constructed wetlands is a proven technology in some parts of the world. Newberry, with our proclivity for development of sinkholes, we're still trying to determine if that is the best route for us, and that's part of what the planning document is still working on, and we'll probably end up working to some extent on that in design. But either these constructed wetlands become public access. So most people that are building constructed wetlands turn them into wildlife sanctuaries, and the public is welcome to visit them, and they photograph and they enjoy nature. It is very park-like, and a lot of communities are getting FERDAP grants, recreational grants, on top of their wastewater grants to develop these constructed wetlands into parks with nature trails and the like, public parking and things of those. So that is to the mayor's point about, some treatment plant changes that would be different. Currently with spray irrigation, it is public access is restricted. With constructed wetlands, you would actually invite public access by way of a park. To Commissioner Commissioner Martin's question about what are some of the things that we're contemplating on site. As I mentioned, out of the 93 acres for sale, we know that we need 78, so that leaves currently today 15 acres. Now, by the time we're all wrapped and done, it may be 20 acres surplus or it may be 10 acres surplus, but we anticipate a surplus. And we've got a roster of items that have been discussed in the community, some by the commission, as to what could go there. But they'd have to be a good fit. One of those is the location of the county's rural collection center. We talked about that at our joint meeting with Alachua County. We've talked about moving our public works compound. Matter of fact, we've kind of planned on moving our public works compound because when the state road goes through, we're going to have highway frontage, and a public works compound has heavy equipment and piles of rubble and things of those, might not be the best place for our staff to be entering the city, is right there on a state road. So we've thought about moving the public works compound, making it an operations center, and scale it up for the next 30 to 40 years of city's needs. Alachua County has funding to build a fire training facility, and they want to partner with us. They want to build one on the west side of town. So they're bringing money. They said, Newberry, if you'll provide dirt space and some water system upgrades, we'll spend our money and we'll co-develop a firefighter training facility that would be used by the entire region. Gilchrist County, Levy County, all of those. That requires a few acres. Mr. Mayor, we have talked about relocating an ant research facility that is located in the heart of downtown and could be better used somewhere else. Out to that site, it would be in buffer areas. We've talked about the one that seems to be most controversial is potentially locating a meat processing facility there. But as the mayor said, we're at about 10,000 feet now, and none of that can happen without commission approval. So finally, to the final point, our next step at the wastewater plant is to kind of do a master site plan. Right now we're doing the planning for the wastewater plant expansion, but what we consider in a master site plan is getting a consultant to help us say, okay, out of the 93 acres, we have to do this with wastewater. We've got this much left over. This would be a good neighbor for residential development, and we'll slide it over here like these constructed wetlands. We might slide that up to residential because there's no noise, no smell. It's an easy neighbor, and we might move our public works compound kind of more into the interior of the site because, well, that's kind of a dirty looking, messy looking operation. We'll take into account things like traffic flow and efficiencies of building utility infrastructure. So staff's next recommendation is that we take on a master site planning and figure out what we think needs to be there and how it would best fit on the site so that it would best fit within our community.
And I think the most important thing to take away from all of those ideas, all of those different ideas that are circulating out there, is that there's 15 acres left over on this site. Maybe 20 if we get real tight. So you got all of those competing ideas that are competing for about a 15-acre site. I've had people call me up and say, I've heard you're going to have 50 acres of stinking livestock in the middle of town smelling. And I'm thinking, whoa. But, it's Newberry. We get rumors going around, right? We got 15 acres of things that are competing for all these different ideas. Some of these ideas are big ideas and creative ideas. Some of these ideas are, hey, let's move our yards out there. But not all of these ideas can happen. And some of these ideas, I think, probably take more than 15 acres to make happen. And if it does happen, like if the county's meatpacking plant happens, well, it's got to happen in a 15-acre lot, not a 90-acre lot, because we've only got 15 acres left on this site. So, I get that people get nervous when they hear ideas, but that's why we have conversations, so that we can, kind of flesh out these conversations and pursue them and see what has merit and see what doesn't have merit. But if I just shut down conversations, I wouldn't be being transparent to the residents, because a lot of things that I said, well, that'll never happen, end up happening because we let the conversation evolve. We didn't shut it down right off the bat. But it's important to try to get the facts straight, because we don't have, we got 15 acres left, and we got a whole bunch of competing ideas that are out there. So,
Fairgrounds, great example of could have been killed in its infancy because of rumor.
Could have been killed right off the bat. I'm sure that Newberry Oaks is going to post an apology to everybody that they called a crook and was taking money and was going to have a fairgrounds right there. It's coming in the mail. I'm patient. It'll happen. So we had a motion, probably second on the floor. Any last comment from the dais? Any new comment from the public? Anybody hear something they have a question about? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Okay, Commissioner Coleman, what number are we on now?
We are now
Do you want to switch to anything else? All right, we'll wait for you. We're on number 9.
Number 9, which was 13.
Should be.
That's one-way pairs? No? We did acquisition. No, authorizing resolution. Dallas.
That's it.
Dallas, come on down. Thank you, guys. We appreciate you.
I'm surprised you don't spec it out this one.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Commissioners. The item before you tonight is to authorize the city to enter into an agreement and join the local government surplus fund trust fund.
So Dallas, since we don't have any surplus funds, this would be a short presentation.
Mr. Mayor, when I refer to surplus funds, I mean your dedicated reserves, your depreciation, your development funds, your fund balance in your general fund. The Florida Prime is the name of the government surplus trust fund. It is authorized in our state statute. It is actually run by the state. It's where the state invests its own money. It has a very low risk. And it's where, if you're a member of FRS, it's where your FRS dollars are invested by FRS. So the item before you tonight is an authorizing resolution to allow us to join Florida Prime. And I've got more information if you'd like it, but try and keep it
Okay, thank you,
short and
Dallas.
sweet.
Any questions? Invest in the same thing your retirement's invest in? If that goes down, we're all sunk.
We've got bigger issues.
Yeah. Okay. If there are no questions, you have a resolution, well, we need to read the resolution into the record, Mr. Attorney. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, the resolution is a resolution authorizing the participation in the local government surplus trust fund from Florida Prime. That's it.
Great job.
Thank you.
I have a motion from Commissioner Farnsworth. Question, do I have a second before his motion dies?
Second.
I have a second from Commissioner Coleman. Questions from the dais. Commissioner Martin.
What access do we have to the funds once we're committed to the program?
Mr. Mayor, that's a great question. We have next day liquidity, so we can put in a request and we'll have the funds the next day.
Speed of government.
5 years later. Any other questions? Commissioner Martin?
The funds that we have sitting idle, I guess for lack, are they actually in interest-bearing accounts? Remind me, some may be, some may not be, and what are the comparison interest rates? What is the selling feature of this over traditional?
So currently, Florida Prime does not have competitive interest rates with the agreements we have with our bank. Currently, we're making about 35 basis points on our bank accounts, and Florida Prime's averaging 9. So I'm not going to invest the city's money in Florida Prime at this time. However, it gives us the opportunity when one day, hopefully, interest rates get better, Florida Prime will outperform our bank interest rates. So we're basically just adding this as a tool for the future. You know, like I said, I'm not planning on investing any funds in Florida Prime at this time. So we are a member of the Florida Government Trust Fund, which is a similar tool to this, and they're offering about 50 basis points is their current yield, which is also terrible. About 2 years ago, we made $150,000 in our investment funds, and last year we made almost 40. So interest rates are bad. But like I said, this is a longer term investment tool for us, not an immediate investment tool.
Other questions? Commissioner Martin?
But we're to your point, I guess we're not committed just by passing this to commit any X number of dollars tomorrow or within 12 months. We have no restrictions.
Correct, Mr. Mayor. We're not under any obligation to place any funds with Florida Prime. It just gives us the opportunity to do so when it becomes advantageous to us.
Okay. I was wondering if our ex-banking commissioner would have any other input.
Well, what you're looking at here is, the big thing is that he's giving us the opportunity to be able to invest into this. Usually when your bond rates, well, right now the way it is, it doesn't matter, but a lot of times your bond rates will, your T-bills and stuff will excel, and if you're invested in a regular bank, it's not going to. And that's where this is a good thing to do this, just in case in the future the economy turns. So
Yeah, if you look at their, Mr. Mayor, their 3-year average, Florida Prime was earning closer to 4% interest, 400 basis points, so way more than they currently are. And then to Commissioner Coleman's point, we do not make good interest in our banks because Florida statute requires that our money is 100% collateralized by the bank, so that public funds are always 100% safe if a bank fails. So our money is very expensive to banking institutions, so they do not give us very good interest rates.
Bitcoin.
Any other questions from the dais? Okay, I have a motion from Commissioner Farnsworth, a second from Commissioner Coleman. Any questions from the dais? Any questions from the public? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. I think, Madam Clerk, keep me on the right path. I think we're on the one-way pairs request letter. Resolution 2021-49. As Mike's coming up, Mr. Attorney, you want to go ahead and read that resolution into the record?
Certainly will, Mr. Mayor. This is Resolution 2021-49. Upon the motion of the Commissioner that provides the motion, second by the Commissioner, the following resolution was adopted. Whereas the Florida Department of Transportation, FDOT, is designing improvements for State Road 26 corridor through the city of Newberry. Whereas the project plans to convert Northwest 1st Avenue from Northwest 249th Street to Northwest 264th Street into a state road right-of-way and split State Road 26 so that the westbound State Road 26 is 2 travel lanes, and in the Northwest 1st Avenue corridor and eastbound State Road 26 is 2 travel lanes in the existing state road right-of-way. Whereas FDOT has communicated and demonstrated that local input into the project is beneficial and valued. Whereas FDOT reports that the design is 60% complete and anticipates the design phase will conclude in the spring of 2022. Whereas the city of Newberry desires for FDOT to consider certain items in the final design for the project. Now therefore be it resolved by the city of Newberry, Florida as follows. Section 1 is to authorize the mayor or his designee to transmit a letter to the FDOT identifying items that the city requests that FDOT consider in the design for the project. This resolution shall take effect immediately upon its adopted by an affirmative vote of a majority of the quorum present at the City Commission of the City of Newberry, a special meeting this 8th day of November 2021. Signature for yourself, Honorable Jordan Marlowe, Mayor. Signature for Judy S. Wright, our city clerk, and signature for myself as city attorney. The appropriate motion is to pass Resolution 2021-49 as read by its entirety.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney.
Yes, sir.
Mike, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The recommended action for tonight is to adopt Resolution 2021-49, authorizing transmittal of a letter to FDOT identifying items the city requests that FDOT consider in the design for the project. Mr. Mayor, I'm going to start by saying that we could spend hours talking about all these things. So I'm going to ask the commission to consider that if you hate an idea, tell us and we'll get rid of it. If you hate the entire idea, tell us. But the reason that I think this is value that, we've been working on this project since 2015, and we've had ideas all along, and many of them are in the design. But a lot of ideas, when we hear them, we say it's not the appropriate time to approach FDOT with it. They need to get into the design phase. Now they are 60% complete with the design. Now's the time to start sharing. This is our last chance really to share those ideas.
And I will tell you that from experience, that what this commission has to say to FDOT carries about 1 million times more weight than what your staff says to FDOT. So Jamie and I can make these requests over and over again, and they may never be heard. I think when our commission speaks, it doesn't mean that FDOT would do them all, but it comes in with a completely different weight. So we were contemplating transmitting this letter, and we were trying to increases the chances of likelihood that we got traction, and decided that actually, Jamie recommended that the commission carry so much more weight that maybe if we get the commission to endorse this letter by resolution, it would carry more weight. So, Mr. Mayor, put together, the letter has 8 or 9 suggestions, and I was just going to kind of run through what they are. There they are. It's kind of wordy, but we do identify each one kind of a case by case. So if the commission wants to wait, if we go in on one and they can say, yeah, Mike, we like that, or no, we don't like that, or add to it, or subtract from it. Still not all. Thank you. Thank you. Add to it or subtract from it. So these are the suggested items. There's 8 listed there. Here's kind of the rendering that was approved at the end of the PD&E study phase, which concluded about 2 years ago. A year and a half ago, DOT's been in the design, and they expect the design to be completed in April. Y'all have seen that many times. So requested item here, DOT have designed improvements on about half of the side streets. And on the other half, they've designed nothing. They're just leaving them as they are today. And their concept is that we've counted all the parking spaces up and down, and we're going to make sure we leave you with at least that many, maybe plus 1. But once we hit that mark, no more improvements on our park. So that ends up with 5 or 6 streets that get no treatment between these 2 one-way pairs. And so here's kind of a listing of them, and it shows visually where they are in the project. You can kind of see the difference. Oh. Sure. This is the one more. Okay, so you can see, this is actually a better image to see. You can see between the pairs where it shows dark, black, those are roads that the state intends to reconstruct, even though they're city streets, between the twin pairs. And you can also see where there are no improvements shown, but there are roads. 251st, 249th, 252nd, 253rd. And so what staff thought is, hey, DOT, have your designer give us a price to design those improvements. And if it says $25,000, $30,000, then we can consider whether we want them improved. The idea would be bid them as an ad alternate to the contractor and say, here's the base bid for all the stuff we won't do. Here's an ad alternate, which we do all the time in utilities. And once we see the price, DOT can report the price to us that, hey, Newberry, it's $50,000 more to build these side streets. Then the commission says, go for it or not. So that's request number 1, is would you give us a price to design and bid these side streets? If we like the cost, we'll move forward. If we don't like the cost, we would not.
Mr. Mike, can we pause for a second? I should have talked to you about this before the meeting because this has been on my mind. Why isn't the request right now just FDOT, we'd like the opportunity to engage in these design elements? Because it seems like we almost need to sort of reset. We've got 2 new commissioners who weren't part of these conversations. It's getting late in the evening.
Okay.
I like the letter. I think we should send the letter, but it seems like we need a little bit more time to maybe a workshop to focus on this kind of a thing. And again, if you think we can go through these 9, I mean, some of us have been here for conversations for all of these items, and it's not that big of a deal. Some of us are just hearing this for the first time. So explain the process. If we submit a letter saying, hey, FDOT, we understand you're 60% through design. We'd like to be a part of that process. Can you come down and be a part of the conversation? We're going to have a workshop. and you'll take away the things that the commission wants? Or do we have to identify it in a letter? It seems like they're gonna say, well, we like 8 of these 9, but this one here.
Well, and Mr. Mayor, that's true, and I'm happy to do it anyway. I think that putting a design team in front of an open forum where the merits of an idea are being debated, we're not sure if we want it or not, we haven't even made up our own mind yet.
Right.
I think that DOT is going to push away from that and say, you know, that's just not how you design a project. We want some clarity. Newberry, decide what you want and tell us. And so maybe getting DOT to come in and say, here's what we're proposing, and we ask questions, and then tell them that our takeaway is going to be, we're going to come back, we're going to gain consensus on specific ideas, and we're going to put that in the form of a letter, I think might be productive. But I think that, you know, this is a contract designer, it's not even DOT staff.
Right.
I think for them to stand up in front of a community public forum and begin contemplating how they would change the design, I think DOT would push back on that.
And that's fine. You know, I'm not beholden to that idea, and I might be reading the commission wrong. We're down a commissioner. We have a commissioner who wasn't part of these conversations. It seems like our request right now is FDOT, we want to engage in the process. You know, tell us how best to engage in the process. Then we come back to the commission, maybe at a workshop format where we can just focus on this issue. We can have some of these more in-depth conversations about what does this look like? How much do these things cost? Why are we asking for these things? But I may be reading it wrong. You guys may just say, let's just move on tonight, and we like all 9 of these, put them in the letter, and let's move forward. Commissioner Martin.
I think we should at least try to take a whack at it now and get it out of the way. The only thing I would like to do is maybe just stop at each one, because I have some comments on this one I didn't want to forget by the time we got to the end. And I was going to suggest maybe in the back and forth, if they shut this down right away, maybe it looks like, let's say they're contemplating 4 rungs of the ladder.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there's a better way of prioritizing which 4 of the 9 that they will pave. Because like the one is this one on the other side of the municipal building, right? On the other side of the parking lot?
Yes, sir.
And we've talked about not even using that one, for instance, so.
It's one of the coming up items.
Yeah. Whereas like the one by Dollar General is pretty heavy. I mean, that one gets a lot of use, but it's not on their list, for instance. Right. So just food for thought.
I like the idea of going, if we want to do this, let's go one by one, because this is going to be the defining characteristic of our town once it's built.
I'm sorry. The other thing is, I think if we're asking for more interaction, they may point back to 3 years ago and said, well, we gave you that opportunity already. Or they may.
Yes, sir. And I would also say for things like the ladder streets, those are city streets. If they address them, you know, they're still not taking them over. They're addressing them and expecting us to accept them. So if the answer is no, it just means it's an issue for us to just consider in either our CRA or our CIP as to it, or do we want them improved at all?
Commissioner Coleman.
I've read all 9. I'm ready to roll.
And
I'd be happy to hit the high marks at each of them and take any feedback you have. I like your idea of prioritizing 252 because of the traffic volume by Dollar General.
So reiterate on this point here, what are we asking FDOT? What is our suggestion for the design out of these different options?
We'll pay your designer, well, we're asking for a price from your designer to design those things.
The design necessarily tonight.
No, the design is what you're doing on all the other side streets. Just do it on these streets that you've left empty.
But we want to tell them what to do on that side street.
No,
Because we've had conversations about parallel parking versus pull-in parking versus
Well-
parking on one side versus.
We'll tell them to make it look like that as much as possible, which is what they're doing on all the side streets they're doing that.
I remember us talking about this, I don't remember us deciding.
The commission,
Conversation.
the commission authorized this.
This one.
This one. We talked about making them one-way, pull-in parking.
Remember the big conversation?
Yeah.
I don't remember the resolution being final, that's my
We sent a letter with that the very next day.
Code thought.
code guy. Okay, you remember? Voting for that?
I'm the one that had code.
Unless it was included in the discussion about how the one-ways work.
I'm okay with it.
I remember that.
All right, we won't go backwards. I remember one-way streets, I remember parking, I remember all of those things, I remember this, I remember seeing this, I just don't remember picking it. But if we did, we did.
But I didn't like the angle thing. I don't remember that.
Although this picture is horizontal, this is actually the ladder.
Yeah, that's correct.
The ladder.
That's a ladder run.
You're parked here, and somebody parks behind you, could be heck of a time getting out.
It's a conceptual drawing, it's not a design drawing. They might put some curves or some paint in there to make it a little bit easier.
I have a low sidewalk you could drive over.
Okay, all right, I like the
So-
bulbs. Right.
Yeah, so this just shows some of the streets that don't have any improvements scheduled. And the answer is let's just address all the wrongs, and the city's willing to consider paying for those improvements. Uh-oh, there we go. Next item is where do we want pedestrian crosswalks? And by pedestrian crosswalks, I mean the more formal ones like Commissioner Martin provided at 254th. So striped, flagging, those types of things. So we took a stab at 6 of them. State Road 45, Seaboard Drive, 254th, 255th, that's the school crossing, 260th, and the roundabout, or proximate to the roundabout. My guess is they're not willing to provide that many, but those were the ones that I thought, were the major corridors, and we'd have a reason to ask for formal crosswalks. And then the suggestion is we have this conceptual layout for Seaboard Drive that the commission approved. Would you consider using our concept for Seaboard Drive as opposed to whatever you've come up with so far, so there's continuity from one end to the other?
Where's Magnolia?
They were. Commissioner Martin brought this up earlier. The commission has suggested that we could close 254th and take the parking lot that was scheduled to be where the the Newberry cold storage was, and build one large parking lot. And so that is conveying that message to FDOT. I think it's a great idea. The commission came up with it during one of our summer workshops. This one is where you take all the stormwater from this site and from Newberry First Baptist Church and convey it to a stormwater pond north of here. We don't have enough site to build stormwater basins on our site or theirs. FDOT is not beyond doing something like this. It takes a formal request. I would be prepared to offer taking over maintenance of the stormwater, mowing maintenance of the stormwater basin if we can get that far.
If we get that, we won't have to worry about
Correct. Correct. That'll really move our City Hall project forward. We'd planned on using First Baptist for parking. Y'all authorized me to send them a letter for parking. They also don't have enough room for a stormwater basin, so we were trying to communicate how many square feet of impervious area you'd need to put into a basin, and actually that basin is now, it's not on State Road 26, it's going to be north by about 2 blocks. This one is, I wouldn't put too much faith in because FDOT's already changed this design since the time that we put this together. But they had planned a cul-de-sac pretty close to that building, and we were asking them to back it up this one's a moot point now because they've changed their design. So as I indicated, real heartburn type issues, I think getting the letter out, and that this is the commission's ask and not the manager's ask or the Public Works and Utility Director ask is the really important thing. It'll force them at least to consider and respond.
Mike, did you have a slide about the golf cart crossings?
I did. I was supposed to. It was supposed, oh, that was what this one was. The golf cart crossing. Yes, I thought it was the same one from the previous one, but formally requests that FDOT put in a golf cart crossing at Seaboard Drive. As you know, you're not allowed to, even though we're a golf cart community, they're not allowed to cross state highways. DOT's local staff, the district staff will tell you, you can't have these, but we go to other places in the state and they do. And so we're planning to say, look, if you're doing it in the villages and you're doing it further down south, of course you could do it here. You just got to want to do it here. And so we felt like that we're not going to be able to ask for 6 of them like we were with pedestrian crossings. The most strategic location would probably be Seaboard Drive because that's where we're planning a connector street anyway, and that's kind of where our restaurant district appears to be. So a golf cart crossing.
And just the one? I think we just get one?
Over First and over Newberry?
Yes, it'd be over both. And, you know, commission's given direction. If you tell me to ask for more, I'll ask for more. And tell me where you preferred.
Well, I mean, I think while we're asking, it would be, if there could be one on the west side and one on the east side. Well, the Seaboard would be right there along the train to get across on that side. You know, I see, I would.
Okay.
That's what I would never imagine that city staff would drive golf carts across the road there, but, you know, if there was a golf cart crossing there, they could do it.
What?
Commissioner Coleman?
Well, that's a good idea. I'll add that one to the list.
What I would do is ask for one, because one, it's in negotiations, once that is done, they're not overwhelmed with 2 or 3. And once we have one, then come back later and say, hey, I'd like 2 or 3.
I mean, my only objection to that is that we just moved a crosswalk at Oakview, and those blinking signs that have to be installed are a big deal. It was like $30,000 per sign.
If they don't do it with construction, it'll cost $200,000 to do it.
Really? Oh, okay.
I'm saying, and I would just say, let's go for one at Seaboard, the one that's on the map, right? Yeah. So you've got that one there, because I think that's a good plan. People are going to be coming down Seaboard Drive from Country Way on the new Seaboard Drive, right, Larry Keene Drive. And then let's put another one down, is it 260th? 260th. That would get people across to the park. Right, and that way you have sort of a bookend, 2 locations. That way, otherwise, I have to drive all the way down to Seaboard to cross and back.
Well, what about cross 26?
That would, so it would cross 26.
45, I'm sorry.
Different project. I mean, we want to get one, and we want to get one kind of at 15th.
I mean, on that, I kind of agree with Commissioner Coleman. I think if we go for these 2. Once you've established them, now we know the process. They can't say to us, well, it's not allowed. We say, well, no, we just did 2. It's just about what is the process. And the next time we have a construction project that gets us across 45, we say, look, hey, we want another one there.
So I got to wait to cross with my golf cart?
South Road 45.
Yeah, that is always the time to ask DOT is when they have a construction project in planning. It essentially costs them no more to do any of the things that we're asking if they're planning construction. It's harder for them to say no.
But one of the ideas for our congestion problem at 15th and 27 is a roundabout. And I think if we can get FDOT to, which they'd really like roundabouts, if we can get to move forward with a roundabout, then you have a nice opportunity at that point to do.
Correct.
To do the golf cart crossing.
Yes, sir.
So I would say
Yeah,
right
correct.
now, in this construction, we go for 2.
Yes, sir.
Let's get the kids to Lowe's Fort Park, let's get people across to the restaurants.
It's your letter. It's their resolution. It's your letter.
Yeah. Is that all 9, Mike?
That's it.
I don't remember missing any other else. Okay, so the recommended action is adopted. We've read it into the record already. I have a motion from Commissioner Martin. I have a second from Commissioner Maison. Any comments or questions on the motion on the floor from the dais? Comments or questions from the public? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. I think that puts us to charter officer annual evaluations. Is that right? Is that where we're at? Okay. I've completely lost control of the numbers of the agenda. So, double check it. Okay, so our appraisals came in very high. The attorney scored a 4.94. The clerk scored a 4.98. The manager scored a 4.92. That's awesome, and we appreciate you guys getting those evaluations into us. And Dallas, I think you're here to answer any questions when it comes to those resolutions. Do we have a suggested motion? No. But I do have a proposition to put forth to the committee. You know, our evaluations for the charter officers work in much the same way that the evaluations that the department heads and the city manager does for the employees work when it comes to their increases. So with those scores, they would certainly warrant being at the top of the merit pay increase. Last year, our clerk managed to get a big nationwide certification, which the title of is escaping me right now, but it was a tremendous big deal, and we wanted to recognize her with an extra increase on top of that. I think this year, our manager, and for Commissioner Maison, might not know this history, when we hired Mike, we gave a series of things that we wanted him to check off the list. And this year, he checked the final box, the CRA, and he has successfully brought everything to fruition that we tasked him with doing. Not to mention the fact that he has foregone his increase a couple of years. Can't remember exactly how many that he's been here. So I would ask the commission to consider an increase commensurate with what we gave the city clerk last year. I think was a 2.5% increase on top of the merit pay. And I would actually ask for part of the motion to not allow the manager to speak to it, because he'll try to talk himself out of it. He doesn't like to be. Did I? Yeah. But anytime we're talking about money, right? Yeah. So that would be what I would ask the commission to consider, and out of recognition for the amazingly successful job that he's done in the past 5 or 6 years of achieving all that we set him to do. Thoughts?
Move to approve the mayor's suggestion,
Don't forget that he can't say anything.
including that.
Okay, I have a motion from Commissioner Farnsworth. I have a second from Commissioner Maison. Any comments or questions on the motion on the floor from the dais? There's a resolution. There's a resolution. Resolution, Mr. Attorney, would you please read that into the record?
Mr. Mayor, this is Resolution 2021-47, the City of Newberry, Florida. A resolution of the City of Newberry, Florida, providing for merit pay increase for city clerk, commensurate with an evaluation by the City Commission, providing for a merit pay increase for the city manager, commensurate with an evaluation by the City Commission, repealing all resolutions in conflict, and providing an effective date. The proper motion is to pass resolution number 2021-47 upon its reading by title only.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney.
Yes,
So
sir.
the motion from Commissioner Farnsworth will pass that resolution with the 6.5 for the manager and the 4.0 for the clerk. Remember, the attorney's increase is built into his contract. Something
He
like
likes
that.
Just like Morgan and Morgan.
Okay, I have that motion, probably second on the floor. Any questions from the dais? Any questions from the public? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Holiday meeting schedule, Mr. Attorney, or Mr. Manager, you're allowed to speak again.
Mr. Mayor, we, every year, as we get towards the end of the year, we discuss the commission's preference for regularly scheduled city commission meetings. Typically, staff advises you that the fourth meeting in November is very necessary because we have to finalize the 2021 budget within 60 days of the end of the fiscal year. So Dallas has a presentation at the end of November for a November 22nd meeting. For that reason, staff recommends that we hold our November 22nd meeting as regularly scheduled. When we look into the month of December, and you have a calendar in front of you, historically we have either kept open till later in December. We haven't had that second meeting in December in a number of years. Staff tends to look at agenda items and tries to make sure that we've got things taken care of at the first meeting in December and that we wouldn't need that second meeting in December. So staff recommends that the City Commission consider voting not to hold the second regularly scheduled meeting in December, which would be Monday, December 27th, which would be 2 days after Christmas holiday.
Mike, would staff be off that day anyhow?
No, sir, not the way that our holiday schedule's working. As you know, when you work 4/10s and you end up with 2 holidays in the same same week, you could end up City Hall going down to 2 days a week that we just feel the community is not ready for. So what we've worked out with staff this year is we're going to work Monday through Wednesday the week prior to Christmas, be off Thursday, Friday, and then the week after Christmas we'll also work Monday through Wednesday and be off on the 30th and the 31st.
Okay. I'm okay with taking the 27th off.
All right. Everybody agree with Monty on that? Staff recommendation? Yeah? Okay.
Won't be in Illinois, nothing anyway.
Do we need that in the form of a motion, or is it just a?
Commission's preference, a motion would be preferable, but
right.
if you want to do a head nod, we can take it.
Anyone want to make a motion?
So moved.
I have a motion from Commissioner Farnsworth, second from Commissioner Mazon. Any comments, questions on the motion on the floor of the dais? Hearing none. Any public comments, questions on the motion on the floor? Seeing none. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes unanimously. That will take us to comments. City Manager.
Mr. Mayor, our city offices will be closed this Thursday in observance of Veterans Day. It's Thursday the 11th. Mr. Mayor, I want to remind the commission and the community that we are having the second in a series of town hall meetings. The first was with the concerned citizens at the MLK Center, but a town hall meeting. This one is, the topic is going to be FMPA and the city's electric system. Next Tuesday, the 16th, it begins at 6:30. It's in the municipal building. And as a special favor, I ask, we have some social media postings that the commission share that and invite people. We have some guests coming in to present and want to make sure that they're not looking at a room full of empty chairs. We'd like to see some faces. It will be an excellent learning opportunity. All the things that we don't have an opportunity to do in a 15-minute presentation, we're talking about 45-minute presentation, 15 minutes worth of Q&A. We'll have everybody out in about an hour. And finally, let me see. Our offices will be open for 3 days the week of Thanksgiving, Monday through Wednesday. Well, we'll be off Thursday and Friday in observance. Wish a belated happy birthday to Commissioner Mazon. Happy birthday. And finally, since I was bound during the consideration of our evaluations and pay increases, I'd just like to express my appreciation to the community, to the commission, and to staff. I've been here 7+ years, and I hate to admit it, I'm more enthusiastic about what we're doing in Newberry. I'm really into where this city is going, and it gets me coming to work every day. It keeps me thinking about work all the time. I believe, I find the work to be exciting. I believe in the vision of the board, and I enjoy working for this board. And I think we got the world's best team working right here. We're a small city, but the caliber of our team is off the charts high. I'm having a great time working with them. I'm just especially appreciative in an opportunity to work and to serve the city of Newberry, so thank you all. That concludes my comments, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Mr. Attorney?
Ethics training is November 18th, starts 4 o'clock at our office. It'll be for 4 hours. We'll feed you and give you something to drink and hopefully entertain you to some degree as in a fairly dry topic, which is ethics training. So put that on your calendars. If you can be there, we'd love to host you. I think Andrew's going to be there. I'm not sure about the new baby. And
You gotta do that, that's torture. An infant.
I'm very privileged to have charter officers like Mike and Judy. Judy's a long line of city clerks that have been really very good and great to work with, and she is no different than her predecessors. And she holds a very high bar for whoever her successor may be. And Mike, same thing to you. I appreciate the evaluations on our end. We take that very importantly. I've already just taken a picture of it and sent it around to our team. It's a team effort, and we very much appreciate it. And thank you, fellow charter officers, for holding such a high bar as well. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Madam Clerk?
Well, you know, it's hard to go after our city manager and Attorney Walker, but I really appreciate you all. It's a pleasure. It's been a pleasure working for you and for our citizens, and I enjoy working with my fellow charter officers, and I'm looking forward to another good year, and thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Commissioner Mazon?
You going backwards?
Yeah, I like to switch it up. I like to switch it up.
Let's go.
You never know what's coming.
Okay, just
Yes.
in case I missed something here, okay? Okay, the concerned citizens are hosting a community Thanksgiving dinner November 14th at 1 p.m. at the MLK Center. That address is 25515 Northwest 6th Ave, Newberry, Florida, 32669.
There we go.
How nobody gonna, come on. Got slipping on me here. And then they're also gonna, the community is gonna, concerned citizens is gonna host a Thanksgiving basket giveaway November the 13th at Mount Zora Church. That address is 25225 Northwest 2nd Ave, Newberry, Florida, 32669. I covered all the bases there. Now, I'm gonna start something new here. So I have a little tip for you guys and for the constituents out there. So if you guys don't know how to pay your bill online, because I was talking to Ms. Morgan, and you'd be surprised at how many people don't know how to, and they are surprised when they found out that they can. You can go to newberryflorida.gov, okay? Up in your right-hand corner, it says how to do. Click on that, scroll down, and you'll see pay your bill. And you'd be surprised, your username is the account number that is provided by the city, which is like a 4-digit number, and your password is your house number. There you go.
Look at that. I like it. Convenience. Yes. Pay with an e-check. Pay with an e-check. Same price. Is that it for you, Commissioner?
That's it.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. I like that tradition. A little tip every time. Commissioner Martin?
Well, the 3 area churches, Anthem Church, our church, DCC, and Canvas Church, is doing a night of worship singing on Friday at Lois Fort Park. That'll be a first for our area, and I'm pretty excited about that. I think Mike had a hand in helping that a little bit. I appreciate that. Just as far as dates and things coming up, there's a whole lot of stuff that's going to happen in the next about 45 days in Newberry between the holidays and just different community functions. So plenty to do here. We need to put our best face on for everybody that comes to visit us for that. And with regards to the evaluations, sincerely, our success up here is predicated on your success, and your success is predicated on their success. That does not fall short on me, and I don't think it falls short on anybody up here at all. We do appreciate when you tee everything up for us. It makes our jobs a lot easier, and I agree. I think we have a fantastic team here together, and I appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Farnsworth.
I'm just kind of curious as to when we're going to start working on the LDRs.
Mr. Mayor, I don't have a specific date, but I will transmit an email to the commission tomorrow with a greater level of detail as to what we're proposing. I know that related, it will be a component of our LDRs. It won't be an overall redo of our LDRs, but a component is the corridors overlay district. And that work has begun. We've engaged a consultant, and there will be some public meetings in the very near future to get feedback about what we'd like to see in the overlay district. I don't believe that we have a full-scale A to Z LDR upgrade in the budget. Last I checked, that's $100,000 to $150,000 effort, and we've never been able to get through a budget hearing. So we do bits and pieces, and we will be working on bits and pieces. One of those bits and pieces is the State Road Corridor Overlay District that the Commission asked us to prepare. We'll get more information out on that and any other work related to upgrading our LDRs to the Commission this week, tomorrow, or Wednesday.
Well, something needs to be done. Because, I mean, these companies coming in like they are, and then they come in, they change the way they had originally, the way they had out there, and then they come in and change it. First, they get the approval by the zoning board, and then they come to the city, and we approve it, and then they come back and ask for changes and stuff, and something needs to be more concrete as to holding their feet to the fire once they get their initial approval, especially from the zoning board.
Happy to have conversations to learn more about what the Commission would like to see us do with those. I think that what is approved for all of those agreements dating back to when they were initially considered, it is staff's responsibility to enforce what is approved or get support the applicant. And when I say support, I mean enable the applicant to get an application in front of the Commission, whether we recommend approval or not. If someone, by state law, if they want to submit a petition asking for a change, we can't deny them as staff. They got to come before the Commission. But it's always a good opportunity for us to learn what the Commission thinks is important, especially as it relates to LDRs. I can think of half a dozen things in the LDRs that I think staff would recommend a change in. But things like, and it was mentioned earlier tonight, sidewalks on both sides of the street. Our LDR is required on one side of the street. If the Commission wants them on two sides, then we're happy to make that change. It's just helping the Commission to understand that that increases the cost of the development, and ultimately the purchaser of the property, the home buyer, pays those costs. Developers doing those as pass through. But there's a number of those, and we'd be happy to entertain them all and move them forward.
Okay, I mean, when they come back and make changes like that, and then the staff approves it, and it comes before us, and the staff recommends that we approve it, then when we have no really other recourse.
Understood. Yes, sir, I understand.
So, I mean, it just seems like I don't know. I'm kind of frustrated with the whole situation.
Can I jump in here, because one of my comments was going to be on that overlay district, and to that point, because we are under such tension here with our current growth rate and the number of applicants that we have. The number of applicants that we have and where they want to grow are up and down 26 and up and down 27. And those are our highest visibility areas. And so out of that visioning process, when we talked about the LDRs and we talked about the price tag for the LDRs and the length of time it was the LDRs, all of that seemed like that was too expensive and was going to take too long. Whereas what we really need to focus on is those two corridors and saying we can put an overlay district on top of it. So we're not changing every LDR in the city of Newberry, but we are going to change up and down those corridors to get that higher standard, to make sure that we're producing a product that's going to be attractive. So I'm glad that it's already underway. We had a conversation at the last P&Z about another developer who wants to develop down 26 inside our urban services core. And I know that we were communicating with developers that we were undergoing a visioning process. We needed to wait until that visioning process was finished, and then we needed to see what the outcome of the visioning process was and whether we needed to change things. They were taking the stance that all they were asked to do was wait until the visioning process was over. Well, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me, because the only way you can move forward immediately after the visioning process is over is if everybody in Newberry said, we like the way you're going, continue. That's not quite what we heard. We heard a lot of positive feedback, but we did hear a lot of, hey, we'd like some nicer neighborhoods. We'd like some nicer areas in town. So I think that the overlay districts are going to speak directly to that frustration that you're expressing, and it's going to be a lot quicker way to get us there than changing the entire LDRs. Unless Ms. Jackson turns out to just be a dynamite employee and we just sick her on that whole thing solo, because we pulled 7 quasi-judicials off tonight. We had 17, I think, the last planning and zoning. I mean, our Little Red Schoolhouse is taxed right now with people wanting to annex in, people wanting to change to commercial, people wanting to build things. We've got an awful lot of interest in Newberry right now. So I have no problem saying I love that interest, but if you're going to build right in our downtown corridors, you're going to have to build a nicer product, because we got a lot of people asking us to build at this point in time. Which also segues to something else I wanted to say, not to jump in front of you, Commissioner Coleman, but we had discussed in the visioning our urban services area. And I'd like to bring that back, because, sort of the answer was, well, we put a pin down in the middle of Newberry and we drew a concentric circle around and we said, that's our urban services area. And I think we could do a little bit better job at thinking that process through and deciding where do we actually want the urban services to go and what kind of green space do we want to protect. So we may end up with the exact same urban service area after that conversation, because we may say, no, that ended up working out well. We may make some strategic decisions, but I think that also speaks to some of your concerns, Commissioner Farnsworth, as well, in terms of how many houses are coming, what kind of developments are they coming. As to the changing in the process, this board can always just say we can say no. I don't. In my recent memory, I don't remember anyone asking, besides for Oakview Village. That's the only one where I have regrets that we were approving changes so quickly, right? I think everything else has been a minor change, shifting those kinds of things around. But those are debatable points, So overlay district, urban services area, I think both of those will target some of the concerns that you're talking about. And I know that the changing the urban services, that it requires a change in the comp plan?
It does.
What's the timeline for that?
Mr. Mayor, Brian sent me an email late this afternoon and suggests that we would look at the urban services boundary in January. If the commission wants a change, it gets transmitted to we would prepare an ordinance for first reading, It then gets sent to at DEO, and we should be able to complete it by the end of April, get it back for second reading.
Okay. And just to be clear for anyone watching, when I talk about going back and address the urban service area, I'm in no way intending it to grow larger. I'm intending it to be more strategic. I think to our eastern border, that makes a certain amount of sense. It's kind of broken off at 202, but it allows the developer that we just talked about in the P&Z to say, hey, I'm in your urban services core, right? I'm right there. But it also is that concentric circle. So it may shrink in some other areas to preserve more agricultural land, more green space. It may grow in certain areas and shrink in others. I don't know. I just don't like the idea of kind of just drawing a circle and saying, there it is. I'd like to think about it a little bit more. But that does offer the opportunity for developers to come in and say, hey, while you got the books open, let's push it more one way or the other. So there's two sides of that coin. And you guys may want it to grow in certain areas, right? That's kind of part of having the conversation. Any more other comments, Commissioner Farnsworth? Commissioner Coleman?
I want to go on notice tonight that anything west of the railroad tracks, anything east of the railroad tracks, if it is residential, I will be voting against it. Until we get and this is the reason why, until we get our schools the way that they need to be, which I know that's not on us, that's on the school board. I believe it's how many houses? 4,000 plus that right now is approved. Maybe wrong.
Not all east, but somewhere in there.
Yeah. So, so there's no surprises. I think everything's going way too fast, and maybe once that's done and the infrastructure around here is better, then yeah. But we'll not be voting anything east.
I would ask you to consider that comment to be that you're going to be strongly hesitant because most of those things will come in quasi-judicial and you need to act as a nonpartisan judge in that and listen to the expert testimony that's presented to you in that moment.
Sure. What you say. And if what I've said tonight knocks me out of it, then, but, yeah, I think when it comes to residential, people are blowing in here, and I understand it's a great city and everything, but, yeah, that's what I'm worried about. I mean, it's just way too many people. So that's one of it, way too many people, and our schools cannot handle it. And it seems like they're not proactive on this. They're worrying about other things, I guess, like, who they have in there right now. And I hate it for you, the way the school board is acting. But until, like I said, right now, we've got a lot of housing going in. And I was excited last meeting because we got all that out there that's going to go commercial, and we need that. So that's where I'm at. If it messes me up for quasi, Attorney Walker can let me know.
All right. Thank you, sir.
All right.
And I would just, I try to take every single one of these opportunities to remind people that the schools in the city of Newberry are not overcrowded because of the development of the city of Newberry. There's Newberry, the kids from Archer come to Newberry, the kids from Jonesville come to Newberry, we got kids from High Springs coming to Newberry, and those are all decisions that the school board makes. The school board could, with one stroke of a pen, could divert all the kids in Jonesville to Alachua, whose schools have capacity, and every single school in the city of Newberry would come under capacity. So when I hear school board members, when I hear residents, when I hear you guys say, well, it's our development and our growth, I have to continue to remind that is emphatically and categorically wrong, right? Now, 20 years from now, when all of those developments are done, now we may have an issue, right? But I would also say, in my experience, if we decide to sit on our hands and not do anything because the school board's not doing anything, the school board will nod, wink, and say, oh, great, now we don't ever have to do anything because they're not approving any more houses. So there, in some of this intergovernmental exchange, there needs to, unfortunately, be some tension created in order to get other governing agencies to move. I think that you guys are incredibly proactive at getting ahead of the things that are within our power to get ahead of. But no differently than the intersection of 15 and 27, we all know that there needs to be a stoplight there, right? You guys have offered to pay for the stoplight there. FDOT has said, no, we have to wait until it becomes so bad that there's accidents and those kinds of things before we'll go in and do something about it, right? So we take a lot of the stones from the inability of other, or the lack of desire of other governing entities to take the same proactive approach that you guys take of looking 5, 10, 15 years down the road and seeing what's going on. So again, I understand the tensions with the schools. I understand the tensions with schools, I think, better than anybody else up here, because I've got 30 kids in a classroom, right? But I also know that that is not the developments that you guys are approving. That are decisions about zoning and where to send kids. And the school board could, again, send kids over to the city of Alachua, which has capacity in their schools, right? Would not take one Newberry resident out of Newberry schools, and all 3 of our schools would come down under capacity. So we are approving developments by people who have property, private property land rights. They're making a decision, right? Both of those decisions, us approving people who have rights and their decision, are creating the tension. But somehow, some way, the school board has managed to put all of the focus on us and not on the decisions that they're making. And they're an equal partner in this. There is not one development that is going in today that wasn't approved, except for Avalon Woods, wasn't approved more than 10 years ago. Avalon Woods was approved. So, you know, everything we're doing today, there's been a 10 or more year projection to the school board, this is coming. All right, how long are we going to sit on our hands? I mean, are we willing to stop everything that's going? And I get there's a whole other philosophical question here, but I just want to make sure that we're continually repeating that, because we've had school board members stand there and say, you guys are approving too many developments, and not concurrently say, and we're shipping people to you from other cities and from unincorporated area, and so we're equally part of the problem here. We're sorry, and we're gonna make a zoning change. We're gonna send all the Jonesville kids to Alachua. That's gonna take 20 to 30% of the population out of each of the schools, right? One stroke of the pen could happen. So there's a whole lot of parts of this conversation that need to be had when we're gonna have it. No doubt, Newberry's growing at a rapid pace. I get it. But all the things we're approving also are 20 years. Some of these developments were approved, and you know, right? Markets crash, and then they sit there for 10 years waiting for something. So they're on a projected 20-year time frame. Maybe it's 20 years. Maybe we have a downturn and it sits there dormant for a while. But if me telling you that you got something coming in 20 years isn't enough time for you to get ready for it, I don't know what else. We're doing everything we can do on our end. I'm giving you a 10, 20-year time frame to address the needs. You know, anyway, we'll move on from that. I wanted to say thank you to the charter officers. I think I said that when we were doing that, but I did want to express excellent scores, and we do appreciate the work. I echo everything that these guys have said, Commissioner Martin said. If you didn't see the Newberry play at the Hippodromes, because all the tickets sold out in about a 24-hour period of time, The committee in Newberry had to go begging to get in to see the play. I went on Saturday. It was fantastic. They did an excellent job, so really want to appreciate they're filming the play. It'll be to us in a movie form in about 6 to 8 months, somewhere like that. So if you don't get a chance to see it live, you will see it eventually. Don't forget the Christmas Light Up Newberry contest is live. You can fill out the form online and email it. You can print it off and drop it off at City Hall. We'll get it to the committee. We're hoping for a big turnout for that. The committee is working really, really hard. We had a summit meeting with the county a couple of weeks ago that wasn't advertised very well, so about half of the cities didn't show up to it. I have reached out to County Commissioner Mary Alford and County Commissioner Anna Prizia, and I think that we're going to, through the Alachua County League of Cities and with those two commissioners in particular, seek to host a transportation summit, because I think that's the one issue that the donut really wants to focus on anyway. I know that's the issue that we would have brought up if we had had a summit meeting in the way that we envisioned having a summit meeting. So we'll look for some announcements coming out of the Alachua County League of Cities on that front. But the League of Cities and at least myself are going to take a much bigger hand in planning this one, inviting FDOT, inviting the North Florida Regional Planning Council to actually make a summit meeting so we can hear lots of different ideas, lots of different.
They had the all cities in the county summit?
They did. They did. Yep, there was 5 cities there. There was about 4 staff members from the county and 1 member from the public. So it was a good first round. Let's say that. I thought it was really the planning stage, like a planning meeting to plan the summit. I said, no, that was it. So we're going to reset. Yeah. Yep. So we're going to work on that. If you want to go and sign up for the Christmas contest on the city's webpage, click on Mayor's Corner, right? It'll take you straight to all the Christmas dates that are coming up that we need to know about.
Is there a map on there?
There will be a map on there once people start signing. So every time someone registers, they'll get a little Christmas wreath dot over their house, right? Kind of a thing. Ping, right? And you'll be able to go around. For 1 or 2 nights in the Christmas season, they're going to run a little Christmas bus that you can get on and have hot cocoa and take you around. I mean, they're doing a great job planning it.
What's the deadline?
I don't want to say off the top of my head. I want to say it's, somewhere in there. I know we're going to announce the winner in December 18th, I think, of the festival, the Winter Festival out at the Town Center. That's where we'll announce the winner. And I know the trolley will run to at least some of the houses that night that they can get to in a reasonable period of time.
Are we allowed to enter?
We'll have the tree lighting ceremony down here. So the Christmas committee that is chaired by Gail Hodge, they are focused this year solely on the light contest. So there's a business contest, a resident contest, and a neighborhood contest. So there's 3 ways to enter. So your whole neighborhood can win. If you just have the most spirit in your neighborhood. They're running the trolley, they're handling the prizes, whatever those prizes will be. That was the whole secret conspiracy. Monty, you blew it, right? The electric bill is going to go through the roof. No, some of them, I know one guy has installed more outlets, like he has a whole other panel outside of his house now to run his lights. So that's dedication.
Too bad Chris Kiernan doesn't live there anymore.
Yeah. Go nuts. That's what we want. Go nuts. I did want to say thank you to the city of Newberry coming to the high school's rescue. Our homecoming this year was a little cold and rainy, and the city allowed us to borrow a tent for all those potential homecoming queens to cluster under so they weren't out there in the rain. So I appreciate that. And then finally, I just wanted to say thank you to you guys because it takes, when we're sitting up here and we're listening to presentations, we can get lost in what have we already approved, what have we not approved, what's going on right now. And way too frequently, people kind of bow up and they dig deep and they're not willing to reconsider the conversation. And I respect and admire people who are willing to say, okay, let me reconsider that and see. And you guys show that willingness to do that all the time. And I just wanted to say thank you for doing that. And that finishes my comments. Public comment.
This is a little addendum to your comments, Mr. Maison, about paying your bill. There's an even easier way to do it, and you don't get charged anything extra for it. And that's have it taken out of your checking account each month. The city will do that for you.
Automatic.
Yes.
I like it. Thank you, Miss Peggy.
I check my bill against what they take out every month.
Other public comments. Is there a peanut butter drive or anything happening right now?
Resident Amy Delucio. So I have a big old list of stuff. From our city sponsors right now, we are collecting their peanut butter until November 18th. Our food drive, again, anybody that wants to make any donations, canned food, pastas, not fresh, please. November 18th, you can drop it off at City Hall, the Fire Department, or Easton Newberry Sports Complex. A reminder that with my Lions Club hat, our Newberry Lions Club Rodeo is November 19th to 20th. It's at the Countryway Town Center.
Festival.
Do what?
The fall festival. It's right there in the
At 8 p.m. nightly. November 20th, which is the same Saturday as our rodeo, you have the Newberry Main Street Fall Festival right down on Seabreeze Drive, Larry Keene Drive, from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. There's going to be lots of food, lots of vendors, and lots of fun for the kids.
And exotic animals to pet.
Yes, and exotic animals to pet. Who knows? Maybe there'll be a zebra. November 21st, as a reminder, you got the community table sponsored by Christian Life Fellowship and the City of Newberry with 11 o'clock worship service, 1 to 3 the community table where they're feeding everybody. December 3rd is the City of Newberry's tree lighting ceremony at 7 o'clock right here at City Hall, all the way down to our Bilberry Park. Thank you.
Thank you. Other public comment? Hearing none, we are adjourned.